cycles of our nature. We watched and learned. And I celebrated with the millions who rejoiced at his election as the president of South Africa, and how he and Bishop Desmond Tutu invented the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as a way of bearing witness to the suffering of the victims without giving way to unbridled revenge, avoiding the endless cycle of violence that would ensue. It was a unique and brilliant way of coping with that incredible challenge of balancing the need to respect the legacy of the past, to witness the victims and the horrors that they suffered, and at the same time to rally around the vision of the future. This is a profound dilemma that Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka called the burden of memory, being witness to the horrors and its victims, and the muse of forgiveness in order to be able to move forward. We watched and learned. We watched and learned how hate could be overcome with empathy, how a divided, wounded society could be transformed into a rainbow nation. And I also cherish the privilege of having been invited to deliver the 9th annual Mandela Lecture in 2011, and of receiving an autographed copy of his book on that occasion. I read and I learned some more. Nelson Mandela, Madiba, our teacher by word and deed, you who taught us how to think with open minds and to welcome with open arms and to commit ourselves to peace, justice, and reconciliation. And in December 2013, I joined the millions who mourned the great Nelson Mandela. For such a leader as he does not come too frequently in our troubled world. We remember him not to mourn his death, but to celebrate his life. His passing gave us all pause to take the measure of our own lives, the measure of our love, our stability, our loyalty, our dedication, and our capacity to rise above the mundane and aspire to give meaning and substance to our lives. And it is with renewed joy that I join in this event in 2020 to celebrate Nelson Mandela on his day, July 18th, his birthday. On 18th of July of every year, we invite you to mark Nelson Mandela International Day by making a difference in your communities. Everyone has the ability and the responsibility to change the world for the better. And Mandela Day is an occasion for all of us, each in his or her own domain, to take action and inspire change, no matter how small the action and how limited the change. For remember that the longest journey starts with one step, and that the most incredible structures are built one good brick at a time, each brick put in its right place. For it is indeed with our thoughts and our actions that we can best remember the truly great among us in this imperfect world. Greatness. Shakespeare said, "Be not afraid for greatness. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them." And Nelson Mandela is one of the few people on this earth who truly achieved greatness. A greatness uncontested by friend and foe alike. A greatness that evoked awe at the nature and magnitude of the achievement, but that also elicited love and affection for Mandela, the human being, in addition to admiration and appreciation for Mandela, the political leader. He was a unique leader in whose actions countless souls found inspiration. Determination, commitment, deeds and words fused into an indissoluble entity, a life lived in greatness, marked by the tenacity of commitment to principles and beliefs in the face of an implacable foe, first in open conflict, then in his refusal to submit and abandon his principles for 27 long years in prison. 27 long years of determined spiritual resolve, a lifetime and more. And then onward to dismantle apartheid, establish democracy, and bring about the reconciliation of his people and lead the nation to greatness. Nelson Mandela belongs to a pantheon of greatness that few stars inhabit. People who fought, but whose names shine not because of military victories, but by the power of their example and their moral and political decisions. Nelson Mandela withstood conflict and ordeal to achieve the spiritual and political transformation of a nation of many peoples, and in so doing, inspired the world. He recognized the call of duty, and in so doing, he responded to the call of destiny for himself and for South Africa. For it is through the living labors of public persons that societies become nations and nations become great. For through the inspired and inspiring words and actions of these public figures, societies will rise above what they thought themselves capable of. Nations become great and lay the foundations for continued future greatness. And through such inspiring deeds and words do public persons lay a claim to immortality. Nelson Mandela was undoubtedly one of those immortal leaders. He now belongs to history. But people like me are fortunate to have lived in his time and to have been witness to his magic allure, his saintly demeanor, his twinkling, mischievous eyes, his humor, and his wisdom. We have witnessed his mind and his heart at work and admired his unique combination of political genius and human warmth, his vision of the rainbow nation and how he pointed the way to make it a reality. But Mandela understood that our freedoms cannot come at the expense of others. And he said, to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. Nelson Mandela was the artisan of peace who was driven by his vision of a shared humanity, saying, I dream of an Africa which is at peace with itself. And he also recognized that the rainbow nation needed to be reinforced over successive generations, and that education will be the key. Exalting education by saying, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And Mandela also exalted science as he lent his name to the creation of a new generation of African institutes of science and technology, seen as the beginnings of a new generation of African research universities. And today, as the whole world battles a new virus and its terrible disease, COVID-19, we see the cracks in the various societies and how deep the inequalities run and how distant we still are from recognizing our common humanity and building upon that most fundamental of links between us all towards common decisions driven by science and understanding. But we are not yet at the concept of a common humanity, at the vision of a rainbow nation at the level of the globe. But there is much more to reflect on. And as I say to you, Madiba, look at how the spirit of freedom and the search for justice animates a new generation. From the embattled cities of America through the ancient capitals of Europe to the lands of Asia and Australia, again, as in the 1960s, we see a massive outpouring of protest against injustice and discrimination. And this surge for freedom and justice will face setbacks, to be sure, but ultimately it must triumph. For as you rightly told us, the greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. For fall we shall. And what we are witnessing is more than a demand for public declarations. It is a demand for actions to recognize and redress past injustices. It is about the making of social justice. a demand for fundamental human rights, mutual respect and dignity and equality for all. For our youth are revolting against a society where there is corruption in high offices, aimlessness among youth, anxiety among the elderly, and a profound sense of loss among those who look beyond material success for the inner meaning of their lives. A new democratic and free society has to be built on the basis of the values of liberty, equality, and social justice. A society such as you, Nelson Mandela, always dreamt of. You who have so cogently stated, I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve, but if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. Indeed, in thinking of these words, and in thinking of you, Nelson Mandela, I think that you truly epitomized Henley's Invictus, the unconquerable spirit. For you were the one who effectively said, it matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll, I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. Ah, Madiba, if death robbed us of your continued presence among us, we still think of you with affection and admiration. May you rest in peace, and may your legacy live forever.
Thank you very much, Professor Ismail Serajaldin, co-president of Nizami Ganjavi International Center, for your very wise words and very inspiring ideas. Now it's time to change again for Europe. John Carlin is a very close friend of Ubuntu Leaders Academy. All of us, Ubuntu leaders, we are fans of John Carlin. John Carlin is a British journalist and author. Much of his career has dealt with the politicals of South Africa. In 2008, he published the book Playing the Enemy, Nelson Mandela and the Game That Made the Nation, about how Mandela used the '95 Rugby World Cup to reconcile a nation. The book became the basics for the film Invictus, one of the most important resources in the development process of Ubuntu Leaders Academy. It is with great joy that we welcome you again this year to celebrate Mandela Legacy. Welcome, John. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me to talk. Mandela Bridges World E-Summit, very, very, very good title. Mandela was a bridge builder, he truly was. His full name was Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. I think he should be called Nelson Rolihlahla Bridge Builder Mandela. He was known for building bridges with his enemies, with the white apartheid state in particular, and indeed with a significant sector of the white population of his country. You just mentioned the Rugby World Cup of 1995. That was one case where we saw that capacity to build bridges, in that case with South Africans, white South Africans as a whole. I had some encounters with people who really were his absolute arch enemies, who I talked to after Mandela became president. And more examples of extraordinary successful build bridging. One of them was a man called Kubi Coetzee. Kubi Coetzee was the last Minister of Justice of the apartheid system. Minister of Justice of Apartheid, a deliciously ironic title. His full title actually was Minister of Justice and of Prisons. So that actually he was Mandela's jailer, effectively, during the second half of his time, of his 27 years in prison. I spoke to Kubi Coetzee about Mandela some years after Mandela became president, and Kubi Coetzee spent a very large part of the interview weeping. And he wept in recollection of Mandela's generosity and greatness. I also spoke for many hours to a man called Neil Barnard. who during the 1980s was probably regarded as one of the most sinister and evil people in the world. He was the head of national intelligence in the last violent years of the apartheid system. I spoke to him at length. Whenever he mentioned Mandela's name, he did not call him Mandela or Mr. Mandela or the president or President Mandela. He called him the old man. Always, it was the old man, as if he was talking about his father. You know, the last head of national intelligence of the apartheid system worshipped at Mandela's feet. Now, what's maybe not so well known or not emphasized so much, but almost as challenging for Mandela, was that he had to build bridges also with his own people, with his own supporters. He had to persuade them to set aside feelings of very understandable feelings of resentment and vengeance and accept the Mandela policy of building a nation together, everybody, the rainbow nation, black, white, and all colors in between. Now, normally when Mandela had to engage in this bridge building exercise with his own people, it happened in private. But sometimes it happened in public. And I witnessed one such case, and that's basically the story I want to tell you here today. Now, between Mandela's release from prison in 1990 and his inauguration as president in 1994, which I witnessed there from a sort of first row seat as a journalist, South Africa lived a kind of bipolar political experience. On the one hand, there were tough but civilized negotiations going on in rooms. And meanwhile, in the periphery of Johannesburg and the black townships around Johannesburg, the worst violence was unleashed that South Africa had seen in nearly 100 years. Basically, the black townships around Johannesburg were at war during those critical 4 years between Mandela's release and his inauguration as president. What was going on was that there were sinister elements within the apartheid security forces in league with a no less sinister right-wing black movement known as Inkatha, who were bonded in their desire to stop the transition to democracy, to stop Mandela's African National Congress from coming to power. And so they unleashed violence on these townships where overwhelmingly the people were Mandela African National Congress supporters. And as Mandela would say, he feared that their aim was to drown South Africa and democracy in blood. The scene that I saw was in 1992 that I witnessed in a place called Thokoza, where there was a hell of a lot of violence going on of precisely the type that I described. Barely 5 kilometers from the building where the negotiations were taking place. Like I say, tough, civilized negotiations. Another massacre had taken place. Massacres all the time. My job in those days was also a bipolar job. I would sort of go and cover terrible violence and massacres in the morning in the townships and go and cover the negotiations in the afternoon. A massacre had taken place by Inkatha and their backers in the security forces in this township called Thokoza. The Inkatha people dwelt in this forbidding big building, which was a single men's hostel in Thokoza. The people of the township, like I say, ANC supporters overwhelmingly were clamoring for blood. They were angry. They wanted vengeance. Mandela came to see them, to address them in this moment of extreme ferment and rage. And a meeting was arranged, an event was arranged at the local football stadium, and about 20,000 people turned up. And I went there, and I went to the center circle where Mandela was going to speak, and I arrived there before Mandela did. And on that center circle where Mandela was going to speak, there was a table. And on that table, someone had left a note for Mandela. And before Mandela arrived, I sneaked a look at it. And on the note, which was handwritten, said, "Mandela, do not talk to us of peace. We are fed up of peace. Give us weapons. Give us arms, Mandela. Give us arms. We must fight." Mandela arrived in a helicopter, and I was standing there very close to him, came to this little table, and he saw this note. I saw him read it, and I saw him nod with a grave face, gravely, seriously. He began his speech, and indeed, he spoke of peace. He said, "Our brothers there in the hostel, the Inkatha people, they have been misled. We must reach out to them." People booed Mandela. I mean, I cannot emphasize how much of a hero Mandela was to these people who were all African National Congress supporters, but they booed him and they interrupted his speech. And the chant rose up, "Give us arms, give us arms." And Mandela began a sort of debate, he alone in the center circle of this football pitch with the 20,000 people all around. And he addressed them and he said, "Look, you must all think like mature political leaders, you must understand that if we play this game of an eye for an eye, we're falling into the trap of the enemies of democracy. And I remember people began to mutter, but others continued to chant, we want arms, we want guns, we want weapons. And Mandela stopped, looked sternly at the crowd and said, do you want me to be your leader? Do you? Because if you don't want me to be your leader, if you're not going to follow the message of peace that I'm proposing, then I will go away. And I remember there was this sort of muttering around the stadium. People were looking at each other sort of in confusion and, oh God, what's going on here? What have we done? What have we done? So Mandela continued with his argument, with his debate with the crowd. And he said to them, look, we cannot fall into this trap. We have to maintain the stability of this country, not just to achieve democracy and elections, but to sustain a democracy afterwards, to lay solid foundations so that we avoid a war afterwards. Eventually, Mandela won over the crowd, and the scene ended with him coming completely turned around, the mood, the sentiment of these 20,000 people, and the whole crowd chanting Mandela's name, just as the white people did at the rugby stadium 3 years later when they won the World Cup. Mandela built bridges with everyone, with his enemies, and often no less difficult, with his own people. Building bridges, that was Mandela's genius. That was what Mandela did. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. All the times you inspiring us as Ubuntu leaders to show this face of Mandela, this legacy, to build bridges, to build peace and reconciliation for the future. Thank you, John. A warm hug to you. Vamos agora até a África do Sul. A par de Mandela, também Desmond Tutu é uma importante referência no âmbito da Academia de Líderes Ubuntu. É também um dos nossos líderes de referência. Temos hoje connosco a diretora-geral da Fundação Desmond and Leah Tutu Legacy, Piyush Kocheka. Welcome, Piyush. It's a great honor to have your presence with us. The floor is yours. Piyush, could you turn on your micro, please?
I'm sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about that. Good evening. Thank you very much for the invitation. I am very honored to be here. It has been such a rich debate to date. My only criticism would be that after Johnny Clegg, we did not have a global Zoom dance together. That is my only criticism to date. Thank you again, and greetings from Cape Town, the southernmost city on the African continent, where I sit a few kilometers from the historic top security outpost, Robben Island, where, as we all know, Nelson Mandela spent many decades, many of his birthdays on Robben Island. And on this day, Nelson Mandela Day, we don't just commemorate an extraordinary human being. It is at the same time a real celebration of humanity and righteousness. His story, if I can say our story, the story of how Archbishop Tutu calls human goodness triumphs in the end. And I do believe, and I think we all do concur, that this is our collective call. So I really would like to congratulate Ubuntu Leaders Academy for conceptualizing Nelson Mandela through this bridge building lens. Many interpretations of this have already been given. Bridge is such a loaded word. It's so multifaceted and rich in metaphor and symbolism and promise. And through this prism of bridge building that underpins our discussion today, it's clear that humanity needs many more constructed, thoughtfully constructed bridges, I would say, away from the wrongs of the past and today. In South Africa, as elsewhere, there's an increasing urgent need to build bridges away from entrenched racism, violence and intolerance, away from entrenched poverty and inequality, and away from corruption, which we find in the midst of the coronavirus in a massive way, in both the public and the private sector. These are the bridges that both Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Tutu fought their entire life to build for future generations. But we really have entered into a period of global reckoning. We must account for nearly 600 years of skewed development and injustice that followed Europe's awakening from its medieval slumber and delivered us to where we are today. We must account for the impacts of slavery and colonialism that contribute to continue, if I may say, to reverberate today, because there has never been redress. We cannot reconcile and we cannot heal if we lack the courage to acknowledge the truth. And the truth of who we are and what we did. Not just the truth as we see it, but more importantly, the truth perceived by others as well. We cannot build the resilient, sustainable, and peaceful world we crave if we do not tackle the systemic prejudices and injustices developed over centuries and never reset. Many thought that looming environmental catastrophe would force us into this reckoning with the past. Instead, it's been brought on by the coronavirus and a sequence of the most extraordinary events under lockdown. I'd just like to share this moment that
Me gustaría compartir algo.
Our organization has just adopted the theme.
Nuestra organización ha adoptado.
You can imagine when the coronavirus commenced. The Southern Hemisphere nations watched the havoc as it rode through their better off cousins in the north with a sense of hopelessness and dread. If Italy and Spain were under-equipped, if New York was creaking, what chance was there for us? What chance for the millions who live in slums across the southern world, where observing simple hand washing and social distancing protocols is a pipe dream? Early on in the lockdown, South African soldiers claiming to be enforcing social distancing and alcohol regulations viciously assaulted Collins Koza just before George Floyd was murdered in the US. He died minutes later, as did George Floyd. So this is not just a South African sickness, as we know. The unwritten global rules that have persisted throughout the abolition of slavery, the withdrawal of colonial governments, the collapse of apartheid, allow, if you like, the use of extra force to subdue vulnerable, the poor, and all minorities. So the pandemic, we find, has shone an unforgiving spotlight on global inequality. And I'd just like to share with you some stats that I've just found that just have been released a couple of days ago in one of our national newspapers. And one of our South African researchers, Nick Spol, states, and I'd just like to read this out, and I quote, "Based on the first wave of data from a survey that was released this week, we estimate 3 million South Africans lost their jobs between February and April, with a 1.5 million more losing their income through being furloughed. Job losses were concentrated amongst women, who accounted for 2 million of the 3 million jobs lost. Almost half of all the survey respondents, 47%, I may add, reported that they ran out of money to buy food in April. The pandemic has forced, I'm still quoting, has forced on us the unwelcome realization articulated elsewhere by American writer Anand Giridharadas that, I quote, "Your health is as safe as that of the worst insured, worst cared for person in your society. It will be decided by the height of the floor, not the ceiling." We've always known that there are large inequalities between the rich and the poor, and that these inequalities are heavily determined by the color of one's skin, one's place of birth, and the wealth of one's parents. All of that has now uncomfortably laid bare for all to see. Those stats are staggering, in our context in South Africa. The consequences of our institutional infrastructures of human depravity, if we must call it for what it is, sadly don't go away. They are intergenerational. And to fix the damage is an intergenerational task, I'd like to suggest. The injustice acknowledged can reverberate 10, 50, hundreds of years later, as all historians will share with us. We're seeing right now in the US and the UK with the movement to remove or move statues and rename institutions linked to slavery and or Confederate history. In South Africa, the generation born after apartheid ended in 1994, the born-free generation. We call them the born-free generation. But really, how free can you be when you're born into a deficit of parents and grandparents stripped of assets, dignity, and opportunity? How free can they be working in kitchens and gardens on properties from which their parents and grandparents were brutally evicted when the area was declared for white people only by apartheid authorities? South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, chaired by Archbishop Tutu, submitted a number of recommendations on rehabilitation and reparations in the final report it submitted to President Mandela. The recommendations were only partially implemented by President Mandela's successor. The opportunity to begin to address generations of division, inequality, both practically and symbolically, was lost, and the consequences reverberate today. The anger and frustration of young people experience today was not born in a vacuum. It's because they're inheriting a world predominantly led by men of barely discernible values to the brink of human-made catastrophe. It's an inheritance blighted by the unresolved issues of the past. And the world that's emerged from Second World War understood humanity's interdependent nature a little better than that which entered the war. The United Nations and development of global consciousness around a set of values and principles that we collectively call human rights followed. Many countries embraced human rights more enthusiastically in theory than in practice. Others didn't buy the concept at all. South Africa at that time became the skunk of the world. It was a period defined by a different measure of human greatness. As Archbishop Tutu describes it, people no longer reserve their greatest admirations for those with the greatest wealth or the strongest armies. That really was the era of Martin Luther King Jr., Lech Walesa, Mother Teresa, Gorbachev, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, embodied by Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was not a peace settler grandfather or a peacenik grandfather from outer space. He was a product of his time, place, and courage. He was imprisoned. I will be speaking to these slides a little bit later because it's an initiative we've just launched, which I'd like to share with you. But just to carry on with Nelson Mandela himself. So he was a product of his time, the space and courage that he found himself in. He was imprisoned because he was principled, young, a revolutionary, willing to take up arms to challenge the status quo. Young people are the catalysts for change because they're steeped in the context and technologies of their time. It's as if they have the advantage of innate knowledge. Many think that the unborn today already know how to use a smartphone. But from Tiananmen Square to the Arab Spring to Black Lives Matter, to gender inequality and environmental sustainability, it is the young who will lead and the rest of us who will follow. The Nelson Mandela who emerged from prison with grey hair and wrinkles was still a principled young revolutionary at heart. He spoke across generations. He had intergenerational appeal. These are the Nelson Mandela bridges I prioritize building, intergenerational bridges linking progressive young thinkers to policy making as we move forward. The pandemic and subsequent economic and social events have brought us to some major crossroads. Capital says we must revert to the pre-pandemic status quo as quickly as possible to avoid utter catastrophe. The group of men leading the world agree. But marginalized people point out that reverting to the pre-pandemic status quo is not in their interest. Environmentalists say if we don't change things now, we're heading over the climate cliff. And health experts warn us of the consequences of the world failing to learn to act in unison fast, very fast. Wealth and the economic levers of power are generally not young hands, but young voices. And young voices must inform the decisions we take. So it's in that spirit that I'd just like to share a new initiative that our foundation has just launched aimed at youth and children. As I close, I'd just like to share this newest bridge building program of the Desmond and Tutu Leah Foundation, and it forms part of our Courageous Conversations work. We've called it Lights, Courage and Action. And the focus of this is to give a safe and positive online platform for youth voices to be heard in the time of COVID-19. The storytelling platform has been embraced by Archbishop Tutu, and it's a very important door opener to the future at this frightening, lonely, indeed imprisoning time for so many millions of young people. Young people in despair, but young people who also know that they will be carving the future. And in these interviews, I might add, we found many youngsters from 8 years old to others who truly are potential for future female and male presidents of this country, I must say. We believe that Nelson Mandela would have loved this initiative too, because it focuses on really showcasing and listening to youth in times of COVID-19, their fears, their ideas, their experiences, and we hope their own visions for the way forward as expressed through their own experiences, stories, and reflections. The world really is at an inflection point in so many ways. And we've taken the images, we've taken the notion of lights. Both Mandela and Tutu offered light and hope in the midst of deep darkness and deep despair. They were both courageous. Both Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Tutu displayed depths of courage in fighting against deep systemic oppression. And both of our icons, national and global icons, led with bold and profoundly extraordinary actions for change. And each were lights in darkness where the spirit of Ubuntu, of we are who we are because of other people, was systemically crushed, yet with resilience they each persevered for the greater good of humanity. So I will just end by saying it's now time for the new generation to step up to the values that our two icons fought for. And they are doing so in this polarized, dangerous and cataclysmic time in our history. And I invite all your countries and all your organizations, and through your leadership, I'd like to invite you to our platform to encourage your youth to share these stories, because I think it's in these kinds of platforms and with these kinds of initiatives that we are going to identify the future leaders in our countries and globally to take us to a better, safer world, embracing the values of both our deeply loved icons, Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kotcheka. Our warm greetings to Bishop Tutu and the whole team of Tutu Legacy. Ubuntu Leaders Academy are very, very inspiring by the legacy also of Bishop Tutu. Thank you very much. Vamos até pouco mais a norte, passamos da África do Sul até ao Egito, agora com o nosso convidado Amrad Moussa. Amrad Moussa is a former Egyptian ambassador to India, Egyptian permanent representative to UN, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Egypt, and also Secretary General of the League of Arab States. He continues to work with several Arab and international political think tanks. Mr. Amrad Moussa, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored to be on this panel on the celebrating Mandela's Day. Mandela, a great name in the history of Africa and history of the world. We are celebrating that day at a time of great crisis worldwide because of the corona, COVID-19. We are all discussing the repercussions of such a pandemic, and the discussion centers around the future of the world, a new world, a different world that post-corona will not be like the world system, the world order until 2019. In fact, the order before this pandemic was still a world based on the principles of the Charter of the UN, the post-World War II, the people of Africa, the people of the third world, all of them were struggling to achieve independence and development. Also, equality, basic rights of self-determination, economic and social rights. Mandela, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and other leaders throughout the world, Africa, Asia, Latin America, Europe, and America itself, US and Canada, all of them tried under the leadership of big names like Mandela and others, tried to build a world with peace, development, and coexistence. But that is the pre-pandemic. Post-COVID-19, I tend to think, had Nelson Mandela be living today, what would have been his advice or his leadership, his vision for a new world, or as has been said, the new normal? Because I don't think, and many also believe like me, that it is not a revolution. It will be an evolution that would transfer the world from an era to another. I think, and I submit, that had Nelson Mandela been living today, he would have led the world in two directions. First one is about a new definition of internal peace and security. He would have advised that the multilateral system needs a change, not in the hierarchy and the buildings and the procedures only, but on the agenda. He would have, and the definition of threats to international peace and security, he would have advised that the agenda of the Security Council should change and should adopt a new priority. And the priority should be given to pandemics, climate change, the overpopulation, and the racial discrimination and the religious intolerance. Those four items, I believe that Nelson Mandela would have insisted that they be inserted into the agenda of the Security Council and with priority. He would have insisted that the threats to international peace, international security, should be changed in order to include those new challenges with a priority, he would have asked the big powers, the veto powers in the Security Council to agree, to reach a gentleman agreement that all resolutions related to pandemics and how to cooperate in the field of combating the pandemics should not be subject to veto. In addition to this, change in the agenda of the Security Council and the definition of threats to international peace and security, Mandela would have seen that the world is getting into another Cold War. He would have led the world to establish a new movement of non-aligned countries, model 21st century. Non-aligned countries, in order to prevent the deterioration of relations between the two big powers, America and China, and that non-aligned should not be based only on Asia, Africa, and Latin America, as has been the case in the non-aligned movement of the 20th century. But this should include Europe and eventually Russia. It is for all countries, rich and poor, strong and weak, north and south, that all of them, all of us, should stand firm that we would not allow the weapons, use of weapons, developments of weapons of mass destruction, or the relations between China and the United States to reach a point of confrontation. That is how I believe, had Nelson Mandela been with us today, he would have labored in this direction, of changing the multilateral system and working with a new world between the two big powers. Hello, I'm on. Hello.
Some difficulties with the
Yeah,
internet
okay.
connection.
Tell me, please.
Connection.
Where did I stop? Hello,
If you
where did I
can
stop?
conclude your speech, perhaps we will try to listening you.
Have you heard me?
We have no image from you, only
Yes.
your voices.
On the two propositions that I spoke about,
Okay.
had Mandela been living with us today?
Exactly. If you
Okay.
want to make your final remarks.
Yes, I would. Yes.
Thank
My
you.
final conclusion is that Mandela taught us in Africa and in the world, in fact, that to sit in this driver's seat doesn't mean that you sit forever. When his term was over, he just left the presidency. This was a lesson to Africa and many leaders in the third world, that presidency, assuming the presidency, should not be a lifetime job. This is also a legacy of Mr. Mandela. I can stop here, and thank you very much for giving me the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your participation in this international conference. Mrs. Amrad Moussa from Egypt, thank you for your reflection with us. Vamos agora até a Ásia, Singapura. Singapura chega-nos agora a nossa próxima convidada, Noeline Iser. Noeline Iser is currently a member of the UN Secretary-General High-Level Advisor Council for Mediation. She was UN Under-Secretary-General and the first female Executive Secretary of UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific. She led the UN Development Fund for Human, and also she had the experience to work directly with Mr. Mandela in Burundi peace process. Welcome. It's a great honor to have your presence with us.
Thank you very much. Dear Ubuntu leaders and dear community of bridge builders, warm greetings from Singapore. It is actually past 1 a.m., but it's a new dawn. So it's a lovely opportunity for me to do my reflection as we think of the new dawn that we all would like to see. Now, President Mandela was the very best of humanity. He was called on by history to do extraordinary things. And in rising to this challenge, he inspired not only his own people, but people in every corner around the world. We've come today to remember an exceptional hero and to rejoice in a life of exceptional courage. Madiba changed the world and our lives, each and every one of us. He had the gift of touching, but not just touching, but transforming the hearts of everyone he met. In November 2009, to recognize Madiba's lifelong contribution to global peace, democracy, and freedom, the United Nations General Assembly declared his birthday as Nelson Mandela International Day. They acknowledge his service to humanity, his work in conflict resolution, racial justice, human rights, reconciliation, and equality for all. Nelson Mandela embodied the principles of the United Nations. On establishing this Mandela Day, former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said, "There is no other person of our time who has done more to advance the values and the aspirations of the United Nations, especially in the pursuit of justice and human rights. For to be free," Madiba said, "is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedoms of others." This message is particularly important to recall today as the world is fighting the worst health pandemic in living memory, with social, economic, and human rights impacts that are unprecedented. The pandemic has magnified the inequality, the insecurity, and the humanitarian challenges worldwide. People are becoming jobless, falling to poverty, hunger, and desperation. The pandemic has not stopped wars and displacement. It has deepened violence and discrimination against women and girls, against migrants, stateless people, and refugees. It is precisely at times like this that the leadership as practiced by Madiba and the values of the multilateral system are needed to support those who are fighting the pandemic and those who can support global recovery and peace building. For 27 years, Nelson Mandela endured prison, Robben Island prison, forced to atone for his belief in the fundamental dignity and equality of every person. He remained unbowed and unbroken. When the day came for his release, he turned his back on bitterness and revenge, choosing instead the path of peace, dialogue, and reconciliation that he forged. Nelson Mandela was a warrior for change. His greatness of spirit lay in knowing when to fight and when to put aside his weapons and take up the tools of recovery and nation building. He knew that in any fight, when the battle is past, it is as important for each warrior to wash the wounds of the other as it is to win. This simple truth is the foundation of reconciliation at his time, today, and in the future. With it, he triumphed over hatred and united a nation in the struggle against apartheid. Nelson Mandela was a great warrior, but he was an even greater man of peace. He sought to build bridges. There is no leader of our time I admire more since my student days, when my first public demonstration was against apartheid. In my former role as the Executive Director of the United Nations Development Fund for Women, my team and I were especially honored to work very closely with Madiba when he was serving as the facilitator of the Burundi peace process. His understanding and empathy broke down the doors which had kept women from the peace tables, and his interventions breathed life into Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. And this year, we're celebrating 20 years of Security Council 1325. Now, what I would like us all as leaders, especially the young leaders, to take this Security Council resolution seriously. We have to work as young people to stop rape and violence against women, not just in conflict, but in times of peace. We have to take up the leadership to rebuild and to recover, to rebuild and build back better, especially at this very difficult moment. I remembered when I was still the head of UNIFEM, and it was the time when we had the Fourth World Conference on Women. I decided to light the peace torch in KwaZulu-Natal and to bring it all the way to Beijing to light up the Fourth World Conference on Women as women begin to reimagine the world through their eyes and to work for equality, development, and peace. In short, Madiba was a moral compass of our time and a moral authority for humanity. As we sail through the storms of uncertainty, remembering and celebrating President Mandela, he inspired us to reimagine our world anew. And it is so critical for us to imagine what that world can look like. How do we create a world free from want, free from violence, and free from fear for everyone? Thank you, Madiba, for gracing our world. To our Ubuntu leaders and to the world community of bridge builders, let's honor Madiba by following in his footsteps. Let us all remember and live the wonderful Ubuntu wisdom. I am because you are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Iser. Thank you also for your kindness to wait to very, very late. But your words are really inspiring us in this journey. É tempo de voltar à África do Sul com a nossa próxima convidada, Thandi Chan. Thandi Chan was a teacher who always focused on social transformation. She founded a literacy program and she was also the first female Deputy Director General of Education. Welcome, Ms. Thandi. It's a great honor to hear you and have your presence with us. Welcome.
Good evening. It is a very great pleasure and an honor to be able to share in this platform at this time. I'm just reminded so much, the more the visuals came, differently from all of you, I felt Madiba alive. He is alive, his spirit rotates around us. His voice, his imagery is all around us. And I agree with Pishak, we should have danced when he started dancing himself. I was 4 years old when I was introduced for the first time to understand that Madiba was a man in our neighborhood. And that was a shock because I was born and bred in Orlando West, which the 2 Nobel Prize winners come from. So I was tutored from the beginning. At the age of 4, I wore a red skirt. I did not know my mother knew about communism, but we walked around the street saying, Africa, my boo, we had our thumbs up that Africa must come back. And Madiba, at that stage, the politics of the day were there. So for me, I'm talking from an emotion of growing up in an environment where Madiba was just a dad. And I watched, and it pains me that we buried Zinzi yesterday. We watched that family go through pain, being abused by the system. And no one can describe the pain of a door being kicked in the middle of midnight and people taking control of your home. It is those imageries that come out. So I grew up as a young person, very angry, waiting for the release of Mandela. I went into teaching and I taught in Orlando West High, which is the school that you see about Hector Peterson in 1976. And for me, the imagery that comes was when the excitement of teaching young people and teaching them in a language they hated. There was pressure for us to teach in Afrikaans. We didn't have the strength at that stage. Young people had the strength in 1976. Neither did we wake up to a morning that I will never forget. A morning where young people were so coordinated, so determined, so courageous, faced with guns. They had nothing in their hands other than placards of release Mandela. Give us the freedom we need. We cannot be taught in a colonialistic approach. That was in 1976. And I think one of the things that came out clearly for me yesterday is that what gave us hope at that stage was a letter from Madiba. Madiba always gave hope, gave that bridge. He said, it is going to come right. It is. We didn't see the movement. We didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But he gave the hope. He gave the courage to continue the activism of where we were sitting. And to these young Ubuntu people who are with us on this conference, I would say to you, it's important for you to understand you cannot embrace this journey with Madiba if you do not have the courage, if you do not have the honesty to speak truth to power, because the young people spoke truth to power. What did I learn from Mandela and I? I was, having been an activist that blocked the rabbi, that was anti the system, that was fighting a very brutal system, we were given the assurance of Mandela's release. That afternoon was very difficult. To watch a man you knew entered as a middle-aged man come out gray 27 years later. And in my heart, and I'm going to make myself vulnerable. In my heart, the anger was brewing. And I said, at last Madiba is out. We can do an eye for an eye. We've been put under this pressure. We've been put under this pain. This is time for us to resolve that pain. Little did I know that on the steps of Cape Town, he would make his famous speech of being a disciplined member of the African National Congress, of being a servant to the people, of preaching reconciliation. My head started to spin. And I think a lot of my generation were asking ourselves, what was the struggle about? But Madiba taught us one thing. The freedom is not about the individual. It's not about you. It was never about him. It was about humanity. And that was the first lesson. And for all of us, the lesson is to understand nothing we do on earth is about us. Everything we do on earth is about humanity, of which we are privileged to be part of. He offered an olive leaf at a difficult time. Just after we were in the middle of getting ready for elections. We had compromised everything else. Then a great second leader in command, who probably could have succeeded him, Chris Hani, is assassinated. I woke up that morning feeling this is but the end. We have now come to the crossroads where we will solve an eye for an eye again. Madiba comes out and says, if I'm your leader, you will come down. You will not take anything into your hands. This is a ploy to derail you from where you are going? What is the lesson for the young Ubuntu comrades who are going to take this baton from us? Understand that in the journey and the quest to make humanity change, you are going to have mountain hills that will be put in front of you. You need to maneuver them and go around the mountain. Don't lose focus. Focus on what you need to do. Madiba focused on creating a nation and going to create a global village of humanity. That was the lesson that Madiba and I felt I learned from the whole process. The third part of the process is, I find it strange that a lot of us will talk about beliefs, about principles, about policies. Madiba lived Ubuntu. He did not talk about just principles. He enacted them. They were embodied in him. When he talked about the love for children, you could see him surrounded by children. He would go to Kunu and be the Father Christmas to the children. He's left us with a legacy of a special hospital for children. That is embodiment of Ubuntu. It's action. It's not procrastination, a project, a plan. He actually acted it out. He did not talk about rural development. He went to live in Kunu. He lived among the rural people. He lived where there was no data. He lived where there was no connectivity. He connected with the people. You need to make those choices. And these are the choices that we're going to have to make in us moving forward. And it is interesting that even when he was given an opportunity of sainthood to show that it was never about him, I quote his words, "I am a mere mortal doing what I can do for humanity," close quote. He touched every part of our humanity and every age. He only touched it because what he did, he brought his own vulnerability. Madiba never said, "I'm perfect." He fell and he rose. He brought in a passion unprecedented. You could sit in Madiba's presence and feel the passion and the ooze in the room without him saying anything. He used music, which is what you young people use. You could see him dance, and his words on this video, he said, "That is the only thing that connects me with the people." And that you must use all platforms. Do not choose one platform. Use a multiplicity. You are dealing with a dinosaur of nature. Humanity has been broken to the worst. When I think about the pandemic, working with MIT in KwaZulu-Natal, which is a rural province in South Africa, I am drawn back to understanding. Just to share a short story with you, a young girl of 12 forgot a mask and was sent back by a teacher. She was raped on the way back. What are we talking about if we cannot start with the little things to dream of the big things? A large percentage of Black people in this country may have universal suffrage, but they're landless. We have just seen a worst deterioration of dehumanizing when a young man was dragged naked out of a shack in the middle of the cold. And therefore, as I talk about Madiba and me, I am saying to you, if we don't address inequality, we cannot begin to take the legacy of empathy, of honesty, or the dialogue that we need to pursue ourselves. I want to say to you in closing, his legacy is hope. You must create a space for hope. His legacy is healing. We need a healing. Throughout the world, there is anger and vengeance and pain. And the power of the human spirit to overcome the impossible. And I want to say to you, the world has made us look like that. When Madiba came out of prison, he was like this. He had a fist. And we as South Africans understand this is being united in the human spirit. And I call you tonight to hold your fist up every time you see inequality and say, I will change this for humanity's sake. I thank you.
So powerful, these brilliant words. Thank you so much, Ms. Tandy Chan. Your words are really inspiring us, the Ubuntu Leaders Academy. Also from South Africa, we have another guest. It's time to move to Professor Jonathan Jensen. Jonathan Jensen is Distinguished Professor of Education at the University of Stellenbosch. He was recently elected as a Fellow of the International Academy of Education. Now it's our honor to receive Professor Jensen in this international conference. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of this grand occasion. I first met Nelson Mandela when he received an honorary degree, Doctor of Laws degree at the university where I was at the time in Durban in South Africa. And like so many people, I was so excited. I couldn't sleep the night before. I had so many questions I wanted to ask this great man. Questions such as, why are you not angry with white people? Why are you so at peace with yourself? And of course, the day came and I escorted him to the graduation platform, and I sat next to him and I was like a child that was so excited I couldn't speak. All I know is that he had presence, enormous presence, and an enormous sense of passion for what I want to talk about, and that is education. Now, Nelson Mandela has said a lot about education in the course of his life, but I just want to draw attention to three particularly powerful statements that he made that I believe is germane to the Ubuntu discussion that we're having tonight. I want to begin with Nelson Mandela in April 1964. He is on trial for his life. There was a very good chance he was going to be executed. He was going to hang for his activities, for his activism against the apartheid state. Then he gets a chance to make a statement. And I just want you to listen to the first two sentences of the statement when a man's life hangs, literally hangs in the balance. He says to Justice Quartus de Wet, I am the first accused. And the next sentence is, I hold a bachelor's degree in arts. Now, I don't know about you, but if my life was on the line, the last thing I want to tell a judge is that I have a degree. I'd probably want to tell him that I've got a beautiful wife and two beautiful daughters at home. I'd probably make the case, you know, that this is a silly political trial. I would start at a very different point, not Mandela. He starts by telling the judge, I hold a bachelor's degree in arts. Now, I've thought about that a lot over the years. Why would that be important, apart from the gentleman Mandela introducing himself to the judge? I believe that what Nelson Mandela was really saying in that statement, or pointing out, was the inherent value of education. In other words, I have this qualification and nothing you can do can take that away from me. You can take my life away, but you cannot take my education away. And throughout his life, this respect for education, this valuing of education, this inherent value that he placed, not on schooling, but on education, is part and parcel of his identity. And I want to say to the Ubuntu leaders, whatever else you might do, invest yourself heavily in education. Nobody can take that away from you. And it gives you the next thing that Nelson Mandela talks about, it gives you power. So the other statement that he made related to the previous that I like is, and I quote, "The power of education extends beyond the development of skills we need for economic success. It can contribute to nation building and reconciliation." Now, this is important, especially today, because if you are pursuing education simply for a job, simply to make money, I don't know whether that is fundamental. I understand it, of course, but I don't know whether that is fundamentally the purposes of education in a democratic society. Nelson Mandela says the education should do more than just give you a job, more than just get you, more qualifications on your CV. What it can do, he says, is contribute to reconciliation. And as you know, also from the John Carlin book, this was Nelson Mandela's fundamental mission, to turn around our minds, that one of the things education can do is to bring together, not friends. It's easy to bring together friends and family. It is a completely different thing to bring together enemies. I tried to do that under the influence of this great man. And I can tell you now, when you work for reconciliation in a divided society, your name is mud. They will come after you. They will say things about you. But that is precisely why our country didn't go up in flames, because Nelson Mandela knew that you bring together people, not just for the sake of bringing them together, but for the sake of the greater good, for the sake of a bigger cause, and that is the building and rebuilding of a nation destroyed by colonialism and by apartheid. And what a reconciler he was. But that comes again out of a deep valuing of education that teaches him, I'm not just there to become president. I don't even think he wanted to become president. I don't think he wanted to make any money. I think what he wanted to do was to make an impact. And he does that through something that his own party members were very critical of, and that is reaching out to your enemies. And South Africa, with all our troubles, is in a much better place today. Young South Africans don't often understand that we were on the brink of disaster in the late 1990s. And thanks to his leadership, he saw education as a route to reconciliation. And finally, Nelson, probably the most, if you asked anybody in South Africa, especially children, what did Nelson Mandela say about education? It's this third thing, but I want to put a spin on it. And you heard it earlier from Ismail Siragalvin, when Nelson Mandela said education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Now remember, the previous statement is a national project. He understood his role in South Africa, which is to bring about nation building and reconciliation. But the next statement, the most powerful weapon, not to change South Africa, but to change the world. In other words, he recognizes the global value of education in making an impact across the world. If this coronavirus has taught us anything, it has taught us about our interconnectedness as a human race. That a virus with origins in a place called Wuhan, China, can tomorrow morning end up in Johannesburg in South Africa, or Delhi in India, or San Francisco in California, and wreak havoc. And that is why the cause of this disease, which is global, cannot be resolved without a global response. But you see, and you know how divided the world is. And so I take from the lessons of the pandemic some very important social insights. What is the connection, you might ask, between the knee on a black man's neck in Minneapolis, the toppling of a statue in Bristol, England, the protests against the right-wing policies of Bolsonaro in Sao Paulo, Brazil. What are the connections between all these different world events? The connection is a grievance against the violent behavior of the state and its authorities. Just like the virus, we see a social response that is global and that is changing the world before our very eyes because of the death of one man, George Floyd, at the hands of a policeman. And so I encourage you today as Ubuntu leaders, I don't know how we get out of this crisis in world politics and in world economics right now, except through an investment in your education that recognizes its inherent value, something that you have, but its binding value, something that can bring people together, and its global value in order to change the world. Go out, Ubuntu leaders, and do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Jansen. Certainly we will go. Your words inspiring us to act and to change the world. And your wise approach to this topic will be very useful for all of us. Vamos dar mais um passo. Mandela merece, com tudo o que viveu e com tudo o que nos deixou, esta verdadeira maratona. Estamos próximos das 5 horas contínuas de emissão. Ainda não chegámos ao fim. Temos ainda alguns momentos muito importantes para celebrar o legado de Mandela. Para nos falar agora da inspiração de Mandela no seu trabalho, chega-nos o próximo convidado, o reverendo Harold Good. É um pastor metodista irlandês que na primeira década do século XXI desempenhou um papel vital no processo de paz da Irlanda do Norte. Foi diretor do Centro Comunitário de Reconciliação de Corrymeela e em 2001 foi nomeado presidente da Igreja Metodista na Irlanda. Em 2005 foi uma das 2 testemunhas independentes que supervisionaram o desmantelamento de armas, uma parte vital do processo de paz na Irlanda. Vamos ouvir o reverendo Harold Good.
Greetings from Northern Ireland. For us on the island of Ireland, throughout these years of conflict and in our search for peace, no name has been more honored or inspirational than that of Nelson Mandela. So it's my very great privilege to share some thoughts with you on this significant day for you and for all of us around the world. It's almost 20 years ago since I attended the triennial conference of the Methodist Church in South Africa, meeting in Port Elizabeth. You can imagine our joy and surprise when it was not announced before the event, and onto the platform came Nelson Mandela and his wife, Gracia. He had been invited to speak to 29 young men and women who were being ordained into the ministry of the church. And he chose to speak to them about what he believed they had to offer to the new South Africa. He spoke movingly and with passion, not only to those 29 young people in South Africa, but for those of us who were there as international visitors coming from many different places. It was inspirational and very challenging. For you in South Africa, your new journey began with the election of Nelson Mandela on the 27th of April, 1994. Incidentally, that's my birthday, so it's special for more than one reason for me. For us in Northern Ireland, our new journey began with our agreement in April 1998. But for us, as for you, those dates mark the beginning of a new journey, not the end of the journey. As you and we have discovered, the signing and voting on an agreement is but the starting point. The real challenge comes when we have to implement our agreements. It's a sad and sobering statistic that 2/3 of the peace agreements in our world do not survive more than 5 years. So we must rejoice that our peace agreements are still holding, but we also must commit ourselves to continuing the journey and making sure that we do not get numbered amongst the casualties. I know that for you, as for us here in Northern Ireland, one of the most important questions is how do we heal the hurt of the past? Coming as I do from a perspective of faith, I'm often asked, what do we have to offer in this journey as we search for healing of the hurt and to establish a lasting peace in Northern Ireland and in our world? In response, I offer 3 words from our vocabulary. The first one is confession. And by that, I mean acknowledgement. Putting our hands up for anything that we may have said or done, which has contributed to the division and the hurt within our societies and in the lives of other people. Not only to acknowledge what we have done or said, but also to acknowledge what we have failed to say and be and do. One of the most defining and important documents that I have in my collection of papers is the declaration from the leadership of the Dutch Reformed Church of South Africa, confessing that by what they failed to say and to do, they were complicit in the evil of apartheid. I profoundly believe that if we're going to bring healing to any broken relationship, be it personal or political, we must begin by putting up our hands and acknowledging, confessing, whatever word we wish to use, our part in that brokenness. That's the starting point. And we dare not ask of others what we're not prepared to do ourselves. The second word I offer is the word grace. Now, if that for some people is a little bit too churchy, let's just use the word generosity. Generosity of spirit. Within our peace agreement in Northern Ireland, one of the most difficult aspects was the early release of politically motivated prisoners. That was very difficult for many people, particularly for victims and survivors of the conflict. We invited a South African lawyer, some of you may know the name, Brian Curran, and he came to speak to us about the experience in South Africa within the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in relation to the release of prisoners. And after he'd spoken, somebody said, "But Mr. Curran, what about justice?" And Brian said, "This isn't about justice. You can't go to a widow and orphan and say, we're releasing people who killed your father or your child in the name of justice." He says, "That's not what it's about." He said, "It's about giving all parties to the conflict an opportunity to share in a new beginning, whether you believe they deserve it or not." And I said, "Brian, a lot of us here are preachers, and our word for that is grace." And he said, "If that's your word, keep preaching it, because you're going to need an awful lot of it." And how right he was. We need grace, generosity. And the third word I offer is the word forgiveness. Undoubtedly, that for many people is the most difficult word. But you know what? It's the most important word. What is it? We could spend a lot of time trying to unpack the meaning of forgiveness. But let Nelson Mandela tell us in his own words what he would represent in terms of forgiveness. Listen. "As I walked out the door towards the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew that if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind me, I would still be in prison. Honesty, confession, generosity, grace, forgiveness. If we're serious in our search for healing and a lasting peace, I commend these words to you, difficult as they may be. And may I slip in one more word before I finish, and it's the word hope. Let us never, ever yield to despair and despondency. Let us hold the hope that will bring us to a new place.
Compassion, reconciliation, hope. Thank you so much, Rendo Good. And the next guest, coming from UK also, Funmi Olonisaki is a founding director of African Leadership Center. She serves on the board of the Center of Humanitarian Dialogue and chairs the Africa Regional Advisory Council of the Open Society Foundation. Welcome to this conference about Mandela Legacy. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying a huge thanks for inviting me to be part of this wonderful occasion. Now, this moment in time is significant. Given the state of the world that's been described by all the previous speakers, a global pandemic, and the retreating of states into their national boundaries in the times of need, of global need, of course, and the continuing struggle amid all of this for the pursuit of peace and stability in the world. A previous speaker, Piyushi, talked about a moment of global reckoning. And acknowledging the truth of who we are and what we did means that this is an important first step to tackling systemic injustices and prejudices. I just want to reinforce that and echo my support for that line of thinking. And Nelson Mandela, remembering Nelson Mandela today really is a moment to begin to rethink how we respond to the challenges of our times. I want to acknowledge first and foremost the Ubuntu leaders here, these young leaders who will be among millions of others to claim the 21st century. And that is no easy task. I must say I'm privileged to interact with many on a constant basis, next generation leaders. And I do that on a daily basis at the African Leadership Center and at King's College London, where I teach and work. As a student of leadership myself, the complexity of leadership is one that I confront on a regular basis. It presents us with a daily challenge to think about the kind of lessons that leaders like Nelson Mandela left us. So it is to our next generation leaders that I want to direct the rest of my very brief statement here today as we commemorate Nelson Mandela. We have already heard so much about what Nelson Mandela symbolizes, which is truly significant. As a postgraduate student in my 20s, in the 1980s, Mandela's place in the world was secure in my mind. I understood that he was a very important symbol of the struggle against apartheid. On a daily basis, I witnessed the vigil in front of the South African Embassy in London, just a stone's throw from my college, where I still work and teach on the Strand. It was an incredible thing, therefore, to observe when a few years later, Nelson Mandela would be set free. And that, for any young person in the 90s, was a big deal. It remains a big deal globally. But now, beyond symbolism, what should young leaders take as the consistent lessons for their practice of leadership as they grapple with the challenges of their time? In this regard, I want to leave our Ubuntu leaders and our future global leaders wherever they are. One key message And 3 very quick observations. The message is this: Mandela's leadership was framed by particular moments. And from my readings of many of his moments, there are at least 4 such moments. And I implore you to think about those leadership moments as something that where you can draw, if you like, the right kind of theory to govern your life and to begin to think about the times we live in. Because this is the same with any human being on whom expectations are placed to respond to the challenges of the times. He was called to respond to the challenges of his times, and he answered that. 3 quick observations. First is the dire necessity of framing a vision of one's future, of a just and peaceful society in which one seeks to live. That at the barest minimum, our global leaders need to do that. And I think I heard one other speaker talk about this as being one of 5 principles. But when you begin to look at what is so consistent, theoretically and practically, this framing of a vision of that future is key to everything. This is what Mandela did in one of his leadership moments. As I read, and I've heard so many people talk about the Rivonia trial this evening, I'm not about to rehash that, but we have already heard this. You will be called upon to make difficult choices and to make your voice count. And that's what he did. Second observation, we need to manage meaning. You will be called up, you will need of necessity to manage meaning through the clarity of your message to sustain mutually held goals with your team. And sometimes that team is your entire society. And managing trust also by being consistent, and that cannot be compromised. These 2 values cannot be compromised. Whether you're present physically or not, your values and consistency cannot be found wanting. And therefore, a second leadership moment I want to draw your attention to where Nelson, that has to do with Nelson Mandela. And he made his case, his note of 10 February 1985, which was read out by his daughter Zinzi, who's now late, unfortunately, we sadly lost her. The words in those notes, your freedom and mine cannot be separated. This reinforces mutuality in leadership all the time. His mutuality with his people was not in doubt, even though he was not physically present. You will recall that was when he decided that he could not be free unless actually all his people, he could not be freed from prison. And he said no to that because he expected that that freedom had to be for the whole of his constituency. Third and last, you can build mutuality even with people, those people with whom you have little in common, for the sake of the greater good. I hope next generation leaders will remember this all the time. If the purpose of our leadership were to be only with those that we agree with and with our best friends and our small societies, then we have no point. There's no point to that leadership that is being asked of you. That, in a sense, is what Mandela's TRC moment, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission moment, was meant to be about. And of course, change is so crucial in leadership. Those times changed, and the onus was on the next set of leaders to respond to the realities of the moments that followed. So as I close, to all of the next generation leaders listening, I am confident that the 21st century is waiting for you to claim it and to embark on a global problem-solving process. The world has a lot of challenges at these times. You have heard so many people talk about that. I hope you will embark on it with confidence, with compassion, justice, and openness to seeing the world through the eyes of the others across their diversities. That is what in our moment now we have failed to do, and the world is crying out for that kind of openness. Otherwise, we cannot solve these global problems together. The Mandela leadership moments offer you plenty to learn from. Like he said, he was also a human being, but he was a human being who stood up to be counted during the challenges of his times. I implore you to please make your time in this 21st century moment count. Thank you so very much for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your very interesting remarks about leadership and your inspiration in this conference. E vamos concluir este painel indo até Moçambique. Em Moçambique está Rui Santos, um dos líderes africanos da nova geração, que dá tudo, dá a sua vida, o seu esforço, a sua energia para estar ao serviço daqueles que mais necessitam. Bem-vindo, Rui. É um gosto ter-te connosco a encerrar este painel Mandela e eu.
Hello. Boa noite, Rui. Boa noite a todos. E é um privilégio enorme estar aqui. First of all, I would like to express my condolences for Mandela family for the loss of Zinzi Mandela. Mandela and I, 13 years ago, a team of documentary filmmakers came to visit me in a community about 30 kilometers from Maputo, the capital of Mozambique, to interview me for a documentary about a project I was working on called Weaving Lives. At the end of the interview, the producer of the documentary asked me, what was the motivation for a young architect like me, trained in Europe, to live the comfort of a city and work in the rural areas and rural communities, drive around the country looking to establish support mechanisms to unprivileged communities? I replied instinctively, I am a bridge. At that time, I was not really fully aware of my own answer. I was not fully aware of its dimension. A year later, due to the success of this project and the social impact, the project was selected to receive support from Nelson Mandela Foundation. The idea was to replicate its concept all over the country. I was invited to visit Nelson Mandela Foundation Joburg in Johannesburg, South Africa. When I entered the doors of Nelson Mandela Foundation, I realized Mandela's dimension. I was offered a t-shirt, this t-shirt, which then became my uniform. I use this because it reminds me all the struggles, the sacrifice, and the commitment that one must take to achieve his goals. 11 years after, I finished my work on that project and I founded Makobo, the social platform that I founded in 2009, inspired almost by Mandela's work and vision, and also the Grameen Bank from Mr. Muhammad Yunus, that I'm very pleased and honored to be in the same panel with him. We worked upon the nutrition, education, professional training, and production of goods, envisioning the future of our country. In 2018, when Mandela left us physically, I remember being in front of a TV, watching the news, and bursting in tears like a child who has just realized he had become an orphan. Immediately, thoughts came into my mind, and I was still in tears when I heard the small text. What hurts me, it's not acknowledge that you are physically leaving us. What hurts me is to be certain that no other man will sit on your throne to help us to carry the legacy you are leaving behind. You taught us about the pain of great responsibility, such as freedom. You taught us about tolerance, about the great dimension of the common good over the individual ones. You have proven that the individual sorrow cannot overcome the happiness of a nation or a continent. You have taught us that everything is impossible until it happens or it's done. Unfortunately, till today, many of us are not yet released from its freedom you helped us to reach and share. Many of us still live prisoners of ourselves, deep inside of our own sorrow, ambitions, and needs, ignoring that many others like you had given their own lives for that the freedom of many never overcomes the needs of one nation or continent. and it is still possible despite any segregation. One man is meant to become part of all greater than himself, besides each color, tribe, social class, and religion. For being only one, for being so little, for so many orphans of this freedom, you have helped us to dream. We do not want to see you leaving. Not only because we do recognize that the fragility of our own convictions, we have already recognized that we will not succeed on handling it without the immense of your work and passion, but also for selfishness that characterizes who loves too much and needs a constant and physical presence. Or we are unable to copy you or generate something similar, even though we recognize that you have fulfilled your path more, much more than we would ever be able to ask you to do. Today, 7 years without Mandela, it is an honor and enormous privilege to be sharing this moment with you to celebrate the life of my hero, a father and a virtual mentor to me. I see myself constantly as an orphan of this father, this leader, and permanently look for this t-shirt to get a slight light to overcome all the struggles and nuances that accompany Mandela's life. Today, we live a difficult period in Mozambique with more than 300,000 displaced people from a so-called insurgency in Cabo Delgado or north of Mozambique. This moment takes me back again to the Mandela and I. Just occurred to me that we have not yet learned enough about the concept of community, interdependency, interconnectivity, and solidarity. Ubuntu, I am because we are. We are a one larger global family. In a family, nobody should be left behind. Mozambique has almost 30 million people, 52% of which are under 18 years old. 80% of our population can't afford to eat more than 1 meal daily. And probably because of it, 80% of our population are not capable to read and write properly. The average of malnutrition on children from 0 to 5 years old is 45%. Furthermore, the country has an unemployment rate superior to 80%. We are one of the most poorest countries in the world. The north of Mozambique, although we have these major investments in gas exploration and the natural resources sector, the truth is that north of Mozambique remains the most populated and poor areas in the country. I visited Cabo Delgado in 2014 and personally witnessed poverty and despair. The people were hopeless. I was there last week, 2 weeks ago, joining the effort to help my brothers and sisters. And what I saw is even worse now than I saw back in 2014. Besides this being considered COVID-19 community transmission zone, it is not a priority. Stay alive, defeat hunger is the first and major priority in the camps created for displaced people. And for those hosts other in their families. The hard reality is that we as society, we have abandoned these people. Not today, not yesterday, but over the past 45 years of our independence. We've been unable to build bridges for our economy and social and cultural injustice inclusion. As society, we failed. We did not learn to put the needs of others before our own fears and our own comfort. And we are continuously building walls with poor investments on social services, particularly on education and nutrition. We have failed. Along these 45 years, we are failing We are failing to unite our country. As leaders, we are failing as a public servants. We are failing to listen to our people horizontally and solitarily. We are failing to learn what Mandela is constantly calling on us to act for. It is time to make it happen. It is time to stop the bloodshed. It's time to stop the suffering of innocent people. It is time to unite kidnapped children with their families. It is time to heal the wounds and care for the living. We cannot live forever orphans of the hope and freedom and equal opportunities for all. It's urgent to perpetuate the spirit of Mandela and of all those who fought for freedom in all parts of the world. Mandela taught us that everything seems impossible until it's done, that building bridges is the easiest part. But even from his own experience, an example, we haven't learned enough that we need to learn also to invest in maintaining these bridges. It was referred here that education and involvement of youth and younger generations should be the path, the way. Let's do this together, right here, right now. In Cabo Delgado, we are waiting for you all, with your experience, expertise, and commitment to build bridges towards a Mozambique more for everyone. I hope that the bridges that we are converging now here today, it's going to be more than symbolism. Will become an effective step towards a life for all the orphans of freedom and the light for all those who decide the direction in the future of the nations. We should be able to fight for all lives everywhere, anywhere in the world. That being said, I'm humbly asking you to join us in this collective call for the social justice and instability in Mozambique, for our brothers and sisters in Cabo Delgado, for the people of Kisanga and Mocima da Praia. In a few days, we are going to launch a global campaign for Cabo Delgado, and I'm counting on you all to build this bridge. It's on our hands. Don't be a hater, be a healer. Ubuntu, I am because you are. Thank you very much. Kanimambo Tata Madiba. Obrigado, Rui.
E com estas palavras e a inspiração fortíssima de Rui Santos, com a sua mensagem a partir da realidade moçambicana e em particular do que se está a passar no norte de Moçambique, em Cabo Delgado, terminamos este painel com grande inspiração e com a certeza que o legado de Mandela nos deixa um grande espaço para intervir, para mudar o mundo à nossa volta e para ajudar a construir mais justiça social, maior dignidade humana e um futuro melhor para todos. Este último painel, estamos a chegar ao final desta maratona, é muito especial. Fala-nos de pontes Mandela. Quisemos neste dia celebrar também a vida de Mandela a partir desta metáfora de construção de pontes e de uma forma simbólica, em mais de 60 pontes por todo o mundo, hoje o seu nome foi alterado para Ponte Mandela. Mas há uma exceção pela qual vamos começar. Em Timor-Leste, não é por um dia que uma ponte vai ter o nome de Nelson Mandela. Vai ser muito especial que a partir de hoje, em Timor-Leste, exista uma ponte que se chama Nelson Mandela. Com um heroísmo extraordinário, já são 3 da manhã em Timor-Leste, tem estado o nosso co-presidente, Dr. José Ramos Horta, a quem eu convido de novo para se juntar a nós, para nos contar sobre a ponte Nelson Mandela em Timor-Leste e também para as suas palavras de despedida, para poder ir descansar, sendo que lhe somos muito gratos por todo o seu contributo para esta jornada extraordinária que temos vivido. Dr. José Ramos Horta.
Obrigado. Desde o primeiro momento em que apresentei ao Sr. Primeiro-Ministro, General Taur Matanruak, um dos grandes guerrilheiros combatentes da liberdade em Timor-Leste, combateu nas florestas, nas cavas, nas montanhas de Timor-Leste durante 24 anos. A ideia de inaugurarmos, de darmos o nome de Nelson Mandela, uma das pontes, como parte do programa da celebração do Dia Mundial de Mandela. O primeiro-ministro acolheu de imediato a ideia e na realidade há várias pontes construídas, ainda não inauguradas, e ainda, desculpe, estou aqui a ser interrompido, portanto, perdi-me. Portanto, o primeiro-ministro autorizou a dar o nome a uma das 3, 4 pontes modernas, uma delas sobre a ribeira de Laleia, hora e meia de Dili, e Laleia é terra natal de Xanana Guzmão, um dos outros grandes líderes, o líder nacional de Timor-Leste, e que teve a oportunidade histórica, enquanto preso na Indonésia, em 97, Mandela esteve na Indonésia e avistou-se com Xanana Guzmão. Xanana ainda era preso na Indonésia. Mandela visitou a Indonésia na altura e solicitou ao então presidente da Indonésia que autorizassem que Xanana Guzmão saísse da prisão para ter um encontro com Mandela. O ditador indonésio, Suharto, concordou, autorizou, e o encontro teve lugar. Portanto, uma relação histórica muito simbólica de darmos essa ponte nova, moderna, na ribeira de Laleia, para homenagear em permanente Nelson Mandela. Portanto, é com todo o prazer que anuncio que o nosso governo, formalmente, por proposta do primeiro-ministro e sancionado pelo todo o Conselho de Ministros, cedeu a ponte, o nome de Nelson Mandela, a Ponte de Laleia, que passa a chamar Ponte Nelson Mandela. E obrigado, e despeço-me de todos, sobretudo agradeço ao Dr. Rui Mares e toda a equipa de Ubuntu por essa iniciativa. Agradeço, I thank John in South Africa for co-chairing with me this year initiative. And to all the participants, young and not so young, thank you for your tremendous contribution, and God bless you all.
Estamos em Timor-Leste, exatamente no posto administrativo de Laleia, município de Manatuto. Timor-Leste, país do sol nascente. Construir pontes nessa altura em que o mundo inteiro precisa de pessoas para construir pontes, também em Timor-Leste. Este ponte que construímos em Laleia, vamos sinalizar, dar o nome de Ponte Nelson Mandela, porque Nelson Mandela também é uma pessoa importante para a nossa luta, a nossa resistência, a nossa independência. O mundo de hoje, como também em Timor-Leste, precisa de pessoas construir pontes. Vivemos numa vida em que há muita separação, grupos, famílias, pessoas, sociedades. Precisamos de construir pontes. O construir pontes. O ponte chegou em Timor-Leste. Em junho começamos a formação. E esta é a quinta formação de futuros líderes servidores. O mundo precisa de construir pontes. Hoje é dia de construir pontes. Amigoto é maneira de ponte. O mundo!
E com este fantástico grupo de jovens líderes Ubuntu em Timor, nos despedimos de José Ramos Horta. José Ramos Horta é das figuras mais notáveis que eu conheço, tendo uma história pessoal extraordinária, sendo Prémio Nobel da Paz, exerce com maior simplicidade, com maior humildade, as tarefas a que vai sendo convidado. Foi impressionante ao longo da preparação desta conferência, como pelo mundo inteiro, todos aqueles que foram sendo convidados por José Ramos Horta, no minuto a seguir, respondiam positivamente. A sua credibilidade, o trabalho feito, ao mesmo tempo que a sua simplicidade, o estar sempre na segunda fila, o estar sempre a apontar para outros líderes, mostra a sua grandeza. Um abraço, José, que tenha agora um justo descanso, já à meia da noite em Timor. Obrigado por ter estado connosco. Bom descanso, um grande abraço de todos nós, por tudo o que nos proporcionou nesta jornada extraordinária. Vamos agora para o passo seguinte, neste momento em que falamos de pontes. E para introduzir este tema, quisemos escolher um caminho talvez inesperado. Convidámos uma cientista portuguesa, Diana Prata, para poder trazer o seu olhar, a sua perspectiva. O seu trabalho regularmente centra-se em áreas distintas da engenharia, da arquitetura ou mesmo das questões sociais. Faz parte do Instituto de Biofísica e de Engenharia Biomédica. É uma cientista com um potencial enorme e é com imenso gosto que damos as boas-vindas a Diana Prata para nos inspirar sobre pontes a partir de um outro ponto de vista. Diana, bem-vinda.
Boa tarde, Rui. Obrigada a todos pelo convite, é uma honra estar aqui convosco e ouvir as vossas histórias, é extremamente comovente. I will speak in English as I was asked to from now on. So thank you for having me here. Oxytocin is a molecule that I study in my neuroscience lab at the University of Lisbon. It is a hormone and a neurotransmitter that seems to modulate how cooperative or how selfish we are towards other individuals, each one of us. And this happens in fish brains, in birds, in mammals, and in humans. As a neurotransmitter, it is a molecule responsible for making bridges between our neurons and to make them communicate. And in effect, it is responsible for making the bridges of interaction between individuals as well. And the production of oxytocin is stimulated in our brain whenever we are in a social context, in the presence of others. It is stimulated by hugs, by being among friends, by making love, by caressing each other, by eating together, and by birth and breastfeeding. And it's also released, interestingly, in situations of stress. And we think, as scientists, that this is to make us want to approach other people to ask for help and to solve that stressful situation. So basically, it is what allows us animals to navigate their social world and overcome challenges and deal with these challenges to the best of our survival. It is what allowed us to learn that by being together, we can protect ourselves better, we can get resources better, such as hunting for food, for millions and millions of years. This is not something transcendent, spiritual or metaphysical, or neither it is a religious discovery. Actually, nature has found that this is true, that cooperation leads to progress through natural selection. So, for example, animals, really small animals like bats, vampire bats, who as far as I know, do not go to school or to church. They share their food with other bats that have shared their food with them previously. So they build partnerships, even between non-relatives. So chimps and bonobos exchange favors, lots of animals cooperate, and humans have actually only been able to build nations and financial and trading systems and trust each other due to this molecule, oxytocin. So unfortunately, nature has also given us the neurobiological tools to fight, to oppose, to defect and attack enemies. That's true. But this biological circuit for competing and fighting is actually only activated when we think that we have enemies and when we think that we are in a hostile context. And then we think we need to compete, or when we think we have to fight to survive, be fed, have our children fed and reproduce. And the great epiphany I had as a neuroscientist is that although we cannot change the systems, the circuits that we are born with in our brain, we can adapt them and we can upgrade them to fit better the time that we are living right now. And so we use them the best way possible right now. So although they evolved through millions of years in a previous time where we lived in a completely different way, primitive tribal societies, now in the privileged 21st century, where we are relatively much richer and there's much more abundance of food and resources, we actually don't really need to be inventing enemies and what we call as scientists outgroups. So groups that we call the others and not in groups. So the scarcity for food, deadly diseases, dangerous animals, the absence of a justice system that exists right now in certain places of the world is actually due to bad distribution of resources, not because there aren't enough resources for everyone. So I think that our biggest destructive danger is that we now imagine enemies and outgroups where there are really none. Seeing enemies and outgroups is actually now like a visual illusion of our brain. It is like using an ancient biological circuit and system in our brains, but to a time where it doesn't apply. Just like our fat deposition ability in a world ripe with fatty food and donuts and pizzas is not adapted to our current world. So that is why I want you to join me in thanking and praising the Ubuntu leaders right now that have been doing a great work into changing out-groups into in-groups by building bridges and by making collaboration possible and connecting not only the people inside their peoples, but peoples across the different corners of the world. From Portugal, Senegal, Cape Verde, São Tomé e Príncipe, Guiné-Bissau, Guiné-Conakry, África do Sul, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Brazil, Colombia, Peru, Philippines, East Timor, Timor-Leste, and Korea do Sul. So the Ubuntu leaders are proving that what Mandela has demonstrated is actually applicable everywhere. Getting to know each other and acknowledging our similarities and human that matter much more than our differences of location in the planet or ancestry. That's reason enough to trust each other and cooperate and prosper by cooperating, which is certainly the way that nature found to be most efficient. So let's warmly praise the Ubuntu leaders for using their brain and their oxytocin to its fullest and best potential and welcome them to showcase to us how they've been connecting the world. And as a powerful symbol, you'll see that they've physically built bridges today, and bridges that are now called Mandela throughout today. So I warmly welcome and want to hear from them. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, Diana. É sempre fantástico ouvi-la. Esta experiência a partir de uma neurocientista, a partir de alguém que é capaz de interpretar a nossa biologia, mas ir também fazendo a ponte com o nosso comportamento, é sempre um contributo que ajuda a iluminar. E vamos então a este momento tão importante, onde vamos começar a falar das pontes que por um dia mudaram de nome. Sabemos já que Timor-Leste tem uma ponte para sempre que se chama Nelson Mandela e que foi apresentada hoje em Portugal, com o apoio tão importante das infraestruturas de Portugal, empresa a quem agradecemos todo o apoio. Foram selecionadas inicialmente 5 pontes por todo o território que tiveram, com o envolvimento da empresa e com o apoio dos participantes da Academia de Líderes Ubuntu, hoje o nome Nelson Mandela. Vamos começar pela ponte 25 de Abril. Na ponte 25 de Abril, Eugénia Quaresma e Margarida Gonçalves, da direção do IPAV, e o presidente da IP, o engenheiro José Serrano Gordo. Vamos até à ponte 25 de Abril.
Olá, boa tarde, Rui Marques. É uma honra estar aqui debaixo da ponte 25 de Abril, a partir da margem norte. Desde a primeira hora que a Academia de Líderes Ubuntu, desde a primeira edição, há 10 anos, que a Academia de Líderes Ubuntu assumiu a celebração do Dia Mandela e trouxe-a para Portugal, e fomos amadurecendo para uma ideia, para uma identidade de construtores de pontes. E aqui estamos num dos pilares desta ponte, para renomear esta ponte 25 de Abril também como ponte Mandela. A liberdade que tem todo o sentido para nós, para cada um, e só faz sentido se realmente todos puderem viver a justiça social, se nós, como construtor de pontes, combatermos as desigualdades e promovermos um mundo mais humano.
Today would be Nelson Mandela birthday. Infraestruturas de Portugal, IP for short, is proud of joining many partners across the globe to celebrate this day under the motto, make every day a Mandela Day. We are especially proud of our relationship that goes back to 2014 with Ubuntu Leadership Academy and the Instituto Padre António Vieira that are leading the event. IP is more than an infrastructure company. We are more than our assets altogether. We are more than our rail tracks, our roads and motorways. We are more than our bridges. Because for all of them to be useful, they must serve one of our biggest goals, which is to provide safe and sustainable mobility and to connect people. We are standing below one of our 5 bridges that simultaneously are taking part in this event today. These bridges are scattered around the country, from north to our southern border with Spain. All of them share the purpose of connecting people. All of them have been relevant for regional development and territory cohesion. This bridge that is upon us, and I'm sure you can hear the noise, reached its 50th anniversary 4 years ago. In these 50 years, it has changed the landscape of the Tagus River southern bank and fostered its economic development. In this time frame, the population of the southern bank have tripled, and the bridge has contributed to the large commuting community between the 2 banks of the river. Today, it is quite common to live on one side of the river and to work on the other side. More than 150,000 vehicles cross the bridge safely every day, as well as 85,000 people by train every day. Altogether, it adds up to 100 million users every year. Now, with this current pandemic, we are being tested to levels never before reached. I would like to express my gratitude on behalf of IP, to everyone that worked relentlessly to help those affected by the coronavirus. We, IP, we have played our part by making sure that even during confinement, the country never stopped. Our small contribution has made it possible for essential workers to go from home to their work and place safely. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and on behalf of IP, I wish you all a very fruitful Mandela Day, but above all, make every day a Mandela Day.
Muito boa tarde a todos. O IPAV, o Instituto Padre António Vieira, trabalha sobretudo para promover a dignidade humana. E hoje é um dia para fazer pontes entre os homens. Nunca, talvez como hoje no mundo inteiro, foi tão claro que estamos todos no mesmo barco. As pessoas são mais iguais do que diferentes. E é também o momento de trabalhar mais a coragem do que os muros que nos separam e os medos que nos separam. Portanto, Rui, é a hora e a altura de conhecermos as outras pontes espalhadas pelo mundo inteiro.
Obrigado por esta mensagem. Foi a Ponte 25 de Abril que hoje se transformou em Ponte Nelson Mandela. Agora viajamos até ao sul de Portugal, até à Ponte Internacional sobre o Guadiana, onde uma equipa de Ubuntus e de outros convidados também quis marcar este dia. Também esta ponte hoje se chamou Ponte Nelson Mandela. As nossas equipas, a Ubuntu, foram estando pelo país inteiro e, neste caso, quem animou foi o Nuno Alves. É para ele que vamos agora.
Boa tarde, Sr. Marques. Estamos aqui na Ponte Internacional do Guadiana, que pertence às infraestruturas de Portugal. Esta ponte une Portugal, a Espanha, o Algarve, a Andaluzia. A construção de pontes pode ser realizada de diferentes modos, mas para nós, da forma que acreditamos e validamos, é termos Mandela como inspiração e sermos Ubuntu!
Obrigado, Nuno, com uma equipa fantástica, incluindo linguagem gestual, fazendo pontes não só entre Portugal e Espanha, mas também com quem necessita de aceder a um outro tipo de linguagem para entender esta mensagem. Obrigado, Nuno. Vamos agora até Santarém. Santarém é uma das outras pontes, a Ponte Salgueiro Maia, que tem também um nome muito, muito inspirador, um dos heróis da Revolução de Abril. Por hoje, só por hoje, no dia 18 de julho, esta ponte passou a Ponte Nelson Mandela. E em Santarém, animando este momento, está a Teresa Marinho, da 7ª edição da Academia Ubuntu. Vamos até Santarém.
Olá, Rui, boa tarde. Estamos aqui na Ponte Salgueiro Maia, uma ponte sobre o Rio Tejo, que fica em Santarém. Entre nós também é conhecida como Ponte Europa. Quero dizer-vos que é um gosto estar-vos a ouvir, estar a ver tanta gente envolvida na construção de pontes, na construção da paz, na construção de um mundo mais justo. Esta ponte recebe o nome de um homem muito importante para Portugal. É um capitão da liberdade, um homem que lutou em paz pelos caminhos da liberdade. Ser Ubuntu é também ser um bocadinho Salgueiro Maia, é estar na linha da frente, é ser um homem construtor, é ser um homem de justiça, é ser uma pessoa de paz. Por isso, aqui da Ponte Salgueiro Maia, sobre o Rio Tejo, vos dizemos Ubuntu!
Obrigado, Teresa. Ponte Salgueiro Maia em Santarém, hoje foi Ponte Nelson Mandela. Continuando a rumar a norte de Portugal, agora é tempo de parar em Coimbra. Coimbra tem um grupo Ubuntu fortíssimo, que une várias instituições e que hoje se reuniu na Ponte Pedro Inês para a transformar em Ponte Nelson Mandela. Vamos até ao João Mar, que em Coimbra nos traz esta ponte Nelson Mandela.
Olá, Rui! Olá a todos os ubuntus, a todo o mundo. Vou tirar a máscara. Olá, vivam a todos. Rui, estamos aqui em cima da ponte Rainha Santa, uma ponte simbólica, uma ponte marcante, em Coimbra. É uma ponte de tirantes, é uma ponte, tem uma estrutura fantástica. Estamos mesmo em pleno coração, da cidade, acompanhados pelas infraestruturas de Portugal, que é quem gera este empreendimento, esta obra. E que mais posso dizer? É uma ponte que une duas margens, é uma ponte que teve os seus complexos de ser construída desde o processo político. Houve alguns problemas na fase de construção, na fase de montagem, na fase de crescimento da obra. Mas pronto, é uma ponte marcante e que hoje, sem sombra de dúvida, merece ser a ponte Mandela. É uma ponte para o mundo, é uma ponte da humanidade e, portanto, é um gosto estarmos todos aqui na nossa Academia de Líderes do Ubuntu Coimbra. Eu vou só fazer uma perguntinha aqui ao nosso engenheiro Nuno Gama. Bom dia. O engenheiro Nuno Gama é o responsável das infraestruturas de Portugal e no Distrito de Coimbra, e ele é quem gera, ou é o responsável por esta ponte. Engenheiro Nuno, o que tem a dizer assim da responsabilidade que tem ao assumir uma ponte importante, uma ponte Mandela, uma ponte humanidade? É um orgulho fazer parte da equipe das infraestruturas de Portugal. Naturalmente, eu sou eu que faço a gestão. Temos uma equipe que entre colaboradores que vão fazer mergulho para fazer as inspeções subaquáticas, ou que fazem a conservação mais simples, como tirar as ervas, tirar o lixo. Sou mais um dos membros dessa equipe. E é um orgulho fazer parte desta equipe de pontes, neste caso aqui de pontes, que unem povos. É uma ponte que interessa realmente como uma ponte para a humanidade. É uma forma de fazer ponte. Esta, como esta, muitas outras. Precisamente, unir as povoações, unir os povos, unir as pessoas. Muito bem. Bem, eu acho que vou passar a palavra agora. Vamos agora ali para... Nós temos uma outra ponte aqui na cidade, a ponte Pedro e Inês, uma ponte pedonal, e vamos passar para a ponte por lá. Deve lá estar a Marina, deve lá estar também um grupo interessante. Portanto, eu vou passar a palavra e a mensagem para lá.
Foram as iniciativas de Coimbra, entre a Ponte Rainha Santa, a Ponte Pedro Inês, uma presença forte em Coimbra. Vamos rumar agora ainda mais a norte. Gaia, Vila Nova de Gaia, é sem dúvida a capital Ubuntu em Portugal. É onde se tem desenvolvido o maior número de projetos, desde as escolas Ubuntu, Ubuntu no bairro, ou Ubuntu Fest. Gaia lidera indiscutivelmente entre todas as autarquias este dinamismo em torno da Academia Ubuntu. E a ligar Gaia ao Porto está a Ponte da Rábida e na Ponte da Rábida a equipa Ubuntu e também com eles o presidente da Câmara Municipal de Gaia, Eduardo Vítor Rodrigues, que nos dá também a honra de estar connosco. Vamos até a Gaia.
Caro Rui Marques e a todos um cumprimento na pessoa do José Ramos Horta. Nós hoje estamos aqui na Ponta Rábida, que há cerca de 50 anos teve uma inauguração com poucas pessoas, porque muitos achavam que ela ia partir, que ia cair, exatamente porque tem um arco extraordinário e inovador, desenhado pelo engenheiro Edgar Cardoso, e que na altura criou alguns receios, mas isso não aconteceu, nem vai acontecer. A ponte está sólida, bem ancorada, com alicerces muito sólidos e bem construída, com sabedoria, com inteligência. Ela significa aquilo que nós queremos para o nosso dia-a-dia. Pontes inteligentes, pontes entre as pessoas, pontes entre as cidades. Esta ponte uniu Vila Nova de Gaia ao Porto, mas uniu também a zona sul do país, à zona norte do país, porque ela tinha esta dimensão de atravessamento mais do que ligação urbana. É por isso uma obra de arte. E todas as pontes que nós possamos fazer nas nossas vidas são verdadeiras obras de arte para construirmos um mundo melhor. É isso que eu admiro no vosso trabalho e é nele que me inspiro para tentar, à minha escala, fazer o mesmo. Construir pontes para termos um mundo melhor.
Bem-aja, professor Eduardo Vítor Rodrigues, Presidente da Câmara Municipal de Gaia, o principal centro Ubuntu em Portugal, a falar-nos da Ponta Rábida, que hoje foi Ponte Nelson Mandela. Um pouco mais a norte, um município também em crescente na atenção ao Ubuntu, Matosinhos. Matosinhos também se juntou a esta iniciativa e Matosinhos tem um aspecto muito interessante porque nos traz uma ponte diferente, uma ponte móvel. Vamos então até Matosinhos, onde vamos estar com também a Presidente da Câmara Municipal, a doutora Luísa Salgueiro, que nos dá a honra de se juntar a nós nestas 60 pontes Mandela por todo o mundo. Vamos até Matosinhos, à ponte móvel e à senhora Presidente da Câmara Municipal.
Comemoramos hoje o aniversário do nascimento de Nelson Mandela, o dia que a Assembleia Geral das Nações Unidas considerou ser o Dia Internacional Nelson Mandela. Hoje Matosinhos associa-se com esta ponte ao Congresso das Pontes Nelson Mandela. Escolhemos exatamente a ponte móvel que une as margens da cidade, o lado de Matosinhos e Leça da Palmeira, e que ao longo do dia vai abrindo e fechando. É um simbolismo que acarreta, pois também aqui nós juntamos as duas margens e aproximamos locais, aproximamos os povos, aproximamos os valores. O Concelho de Matosinhos quer ser um concelho, e é um concelho cosmopolita, atrativo, onde todos são bem-vindos, onde não se faz distinção de cor, de raça, opinião ou cultura, e queremos assim simbolizar neste dia em particular esta nossa vontade de construir um concelho mais humanista, mais fraterno, onde todos são bem recebidos. Um Matosinhos inclusivo, muito inspirado no exemplo, nos valores de Nelson Mandela. Hoje, com esta ponte, simbolizamos esse nosso compromisso político, mas acima de tudo queremos envolver toda a população para que diariamente saibamos honrar um legado extraordinário da humanidade como foi o de Nelson Mandela e com o exemplo de cada um ajudarmos a construir um mundo melhor.
A ponte móvel de Matosinhos, uma inspiração também, uma ponte diferente, que nos traz aqui outra funcionalidade de ser ponte, a voz de Luísa Salgueiro, Presidente da Câmara Municipal de Matosinhos, a sublinhar o compromisso, o empenho também desta autarquia, desta comunidade, na construção de pontes. Agora regressamos a Sul, é um concelho também com muita tradição, Mafra. Mafra escolheu uma ponte antiga, uma ponte muito antiga, para hoje a transformar em ponte Nelson Mandela. Vamos até Mafra para conhecer a ponte Nelson Mandela deste concelho.
No Dia Internacional de Nelson Mandela, é com muita honra que participo nesta simbólica atribuição por um dia do nome do defensor dos direitos humanos à ponte da Senhora do Ó, freguesia da Carvoeira, concelho de Mafra, Portugal. Esta histórica ponte, datada do século XIV, foi construída para ligar as duas margens do Lisandro, o mais importante rio do concelho, fonte de vida de muitas espécies e de sustento da comunidade. Com inspiração em Nelson Mandela, é esta comunidade que afirma: queremos ser construtores de pontes, promovendo o diálogo e a solidariedade.
Construir pontes é permitir abraços. Abraços entre pessoas que estavam separadas, entre lugares que não comunicavam, entre ideias que se encontram, dando força a ideais. Nelson Mandela deixou-nos muitas pontes que permitiram que muitos abraços acontecessem. É com sentido de responsabilidade que homenageamos este grande defensor dos direitos humanos na nossa freguesia da Carvoeira, certos que cabe a cada um de nós garantir que as pontes deixadas proliferam, permitindo que os abraços nunca acabem.
A voz da senhora vereadora Aldovina Rodrigues, uma verdadeira ubuntu no Concelho de Mafra e também a representante da Junta de Freguesia da Carvoeira, uma ponte medieval que também hoje se tornou em Ponte Mandela. Mas não foi só em Portugal que esta ação decorreu. Como percebemos, já em Timor-Leste tivemos uma ponte que fica definitivamente como Nelson Mandela, mas noutros continentes também pontes passaram hoje a ser pontes Nelson Mandela. Queremos destacar e começar pelo Peru e pela capital, por Lima, com o envolvimento também da Presidência de Câmara, da Municipalidade de Lima. Uma das pontes desta cidade passou hoje a Ponte Nelson Mandela.
Queridos amigos, en el Día Internacional de Nelson Mandela, quiero enviar a todos ustedes un saludo. Desde la Municipalidad de Lima buscamos hacer de nuestra ciudad un espacio seguro y donde todos tengan la misma oportunidad para salir adelante. Hoy, el puente Balta, junto a otros puentes del mundo, toma el nombre de este gran líder, simulando aquellos lazos en los que debemos trabajar en pro de los derechos humanos, la paz y la justicia. Para nosotros es un honor formar parte de esta conmemoración que nos permite recordar el trabajo y sobre todo la construcción de estos puentes espirituales de Nelson Mandela. Aprovecho esta oportunidad para invitar a los vecinos de Lima, el Perú y el mundo en general a contribuir realizando pequeños cambios en sus comunidades. Recordemos que todos somos necesarios para construir una mejor ciudad, un mejor país y un mejor mundo. Muchas gracias a todos ustedes.
O alcalde de Lima, com ponte Nelson Mandela, na capital do Peru. O Peru, outras pontes Mandela teve, em Chiclayo, em Cusco. Várias foram as pontes que hoje foram ponte Nelson Mandela. Um pouco mais a norte, a Colômbia. A Colômbia é um país que tem, onde se tem desenvolvido imenso a Academia de Líderes Ubuntu, que tem muitos Ubuntus, é um dos países com mais Ubuntus formados nestes últimos anos. E na Colômbia vamos até uma cidade muito especial, Cúcuta. Cúcuta, na região do norte de Santander, está na fronteira com a Venezuela. Pela ponte Simão Bolívar passaram grande parte dos milhares e milhares de refugiados que nos últimos anos abandonaram a Venezuela, muitos hoje também a regressar de novo ao seu país. A ponte Simão Bolívar tem um significado muito especial e foi aí, envolvendo muitíssimas organizações da comunidade, mas também envolvendo um diálogo com as autoridades venezuelanas, com o outro lado da ponte, que foi possível hoje organizar um programa vasto de iniciativas para nos falar de construir pontes. Vamos então até Cúcuta para conhecer hoje o que foi a ponte Nelson Mandela em Cúcuta, na que é sempre a ponte Simão Bolívar.
Hola Rui, pues sí, estamos aquí en el puente Simón Bolívar que conecta a Cúcuta con el Táchira, Colombia con Venezuela. Hemos escogido este puente como símbolo para representar hoy, para unirnos a esta acción simbólica pues, que se está realizando en 67 lugares distintos del mundo, para hacer énfasis en ese mensaje que nos dejó Mandela de la necesidad de construir puentes, de aportar un granito de arena desde el rol que cada uno jugamos y desde nuestra humanidad para poder acercarnos, para dejar atrás las diferencias que nos imponen la nacionalidad, la raza, el color de la piel, la ideología, y poder construir y acercarnos. Nosotros estamos aquí y vamos a ver en breve pues, el acto que vamos a tener, también coordinado con las personas de Venezuela, quienes van a estar también acompañándonos como este gesto simbólico de unir las dos naciones, de romper las barreras, y pues esperamos que sea una cosa muy simbólica y muy representativa que nos permita enviar un mensaje a toda la gente de la frontera sobre la necesidad de aplicar pues todos estos conceptos y estas enseñanzas que nos dejó Mandela, que fue sin duda un líder que dedicó pues toda su vida a favor de la humanidad y del bien común. Lili.
Bueno, hola Rui, ¿cómo están? Y hola a todas las personas que nos están viendo. Mi nombre es Lilibet Villamizar. Junto a Estefanía, pues fuimos formadas en la Academia de Liderazgo de Ubuntu el año pasado. Y pues para mí es un honor como líder juvenil hacer parte de este gesto simbólico, también un poco desde la organización que actualmente represento. El mensaje que co-creamos juntos, organizaciones de la sociedad civil e instituciones públicas, fue el de humanidad multicolor, porque justamente creemos en que el poder que tienen los colores, así como lo hizo la nación arcoíris Mandela, el poder que tienen los colores para conectarnos históricamente y culturalmente, es demasiado poderoso para sensibilizar a la ciudadanía en este mensaje de Mandela, que es construir puentes, que es respetar la vida y respetar la diversidad multicultural que nos representa. Así que desde Cúcuta Norte de Santander, este va a ser nuestro gesto simbólico y esperamos que todas las personas que nos están viendo sepan que desde acá, desde la ciudad frontera, queremos seguir tejiendo puentes.
Este dia tem sido cheio de emoções. Este seguramente foi um dos momentos mais emocionantes. Perceber que na Ponte Simão Bolívar, que tem sido palco de tantas dores e dificuldades, de tanto sofrimento, daqueles que foram obrigados pelas circunstâncias a abandonar o seu país, de toda a tensão entre a Colômbia e a Venezuela, hoje foi possível ver as autoridades colombianas, as autoridades venezuelanas, cidadãos de ambos os lados a juntarem-se em torno da ideia de construir pontes inspirados por Nelson Mandela. Mas também houve um outro ponto do mundo onde se concretizou um momento muito, muito bonito, foi a Guiné-Bissau. Não conseguimos ter um vídeo, não foi possível, mas temos fotografias. A ponte Amílcar Cabral, uma das pontes mais simbólicas da Guiné-Bissau, que nos fala de um líder muito importante da história da Guiné-Bissau e da história africana, da luta pela independência da Guiné-Bissau, foi hoje o local onde a comunidade Ubuntu, reunindo também diferentes partidos políticos, o Parlamento, o Governo, se mobilizou para celebrar o Dia Internacional Nelson Mandela através da construção de pontes. Porventura, a Guiné-Bissau é um dos países que mais necessita nesta altura de capacidade de construir pontes, de olhar para um futuro que não seja de conflito e guerra, mas sim de paz e desenvolvimento. Os Ubuntus da Guiné-Bissau, que são mais de 1000, são uma comunidade muito importante para ajudar a construir pontes. O que aconteceu hoje na ponte Amílcar Cabral, que foi por um dia ponte Nelson Mandela, foi extraordinário. Mas por todo o mundo se foram concretizando muitas pontes Mandela. De uma forma condensada, vamos fazer uma viagem muito rápida, quase à velocidade da luz, por outras pontes Mandela que hoje, por todo o mundo, celebraram este dia.
Ponte Luís I é Ponte Mandela, em 18 de julho de 2020.
Olá, eu sou a Rosa. Esta é a Ponte da Varela, que hoje é uma ponte Mandela.
Eu sou o que tu és.
Ubuntu, eu sou porque tu és.
Hoje estamos nisso. Eu sou Jefferson Almeida.
Hi, this is Dr. Diego. Circumferential road bridge here.
Mandela, eu sou o que tu és.
Hoje é dia de construir pontes, foi dia de lembrar o legado de Mandela, mas é também o momento em que vamos adotar formalmente a declaração Ubuntu, uma só família humana. Nas últimas semanas fomos recolhendo apoios, são hoje 5.000 os subscritores desta declaração. O mundo precisa de uma cultura Ubuntu, capaz de encontrar aquilo que nos une, de compreender que a nossa diversidade é uma riqueza, de estar centrado na permanente defesa da dignidade humana. O mundo precisa de compreender que qualquer categorização em grandes grupos, atribuindo-lhe uma qualidade homogénea, está errada. Cada pessoa é em si mesmo uma realidade única, diferente, e ela própria dinâmica. A declaração Ubuntu, uma só família humana, reuniu 5.000 vozes de apoio. É um programa de intervenção para os próximos anos, para trazer a esperança, trazer um olhar positivo, trazer a capacidade de construir um futuro comum e partilhado. A declaração Ubuntu, uma só família humana, é hoje adotada formalmente neste Dia Mandela, nesta conferência dedicada à construção de pontes. Esta capacidade de nos mobilizarmos para olhar para o futuro com esperança. Foi adotada hoje a declaração Ubuntu, uma só família humana. Vamos para a sessão de encerramento, para os últimos momentos desta longa maratona. Mas foi crescendo ao longo das últimas semanas a dimensão desta sessão pela adesão fantástica de 30 oradores de 19 países pela realização de 60 pontes, o Mandela, um pouco por todo o mundo, e por isso chegamos a esta sessão de encerramento cansados, mas muito, muito felizes. E ainda com alguns momentos muito especiais. O primeiro orador desta sessão de encerramento é uma razão de esperança. Manam Ansari. Na sua infância, conheceu a experiência dura da escravatura contemporânea de crianças, trabalhando ora em fábricas, ora em minas, ora noutras condições muito difíceis, muito desfavoráveis. Teve a possibilidade de ser devolvida à liberdade, de poder regressar à escola, graças ao trabalho de Kailash Satyarthi e toda a sua equipa. Hoje já o podemos ouvir, mas agora é a vez de ouvir um jovem que, da experiência que teve, difícil, dura, inaceitável para uma criança, de trabalho escravo numa mina, hoje está em fase de concluir os seus estudos universitários. Welcome, Manam Ansari. It's a great honor for us to receive you in the closing session of this Mandela Bridges World E-Summit.
Thank you very much. Namaste, everyone. I'm Manan Ansari from India. I'm a youth leader at the Kailash Satyarthi Children's Foundation. I'm so delighted to be here and to be the part of Mandela Bridge World Summit. Today, I'm here representing those millions of my brothers and sisters who are still being forced to work in worse to worse condition. They cannot see dreams like me and like you. They are not sure that whether in upcoming days or in upcoming hour, whether they will have their life or not. But as I always say, and will say it again and again and again, that the children whom I'm representing today have the same quest, energy, and potential as the children who are getting good and quality education. But unfortunately, instead of going to school, they are working in factories, industries, agriculture, and at various places. I feel it and I strongly believe in it. Today, I want to give a flashback of my life. I belong to village Samseheria, district Kodarma, state Jharkhand, India. I want to tell you that Kodarma is one of the highest mica producers in all over the world. My village is situated in between a forest, and 15 years back, we had no electricity, we had no medical facilities, and we had only one school that was till 5th grade. I was 6 years old, and then I used to work in mica mines. Mica is very sharp, and while collecting the mica, many times I used to get injured on my finger, and it used to bleed with deep wounds. I used to go to work at night, 9 a.m. in the morning, and come back at 6 p.m. And for this, I used to get not more than 25 rupees, which is less than $0.40 a day. If you want to collect the mica, you will have to go more than 200 and to 300 deep down. Only then you will be able to collect the mica. And in summer, there is temperature around 40 to 45 degrees Celsius, which is very, very suffocating. One day, my friend went down to collect the mica, and when he was coming up, suddenly mines collapsed down and he could not make it out alive that day. I often try to forget this incident, but I could not. Whenever I do remember this situation, it gives me goosebumps. And I do not want any child to lose his or her life in mines anymore. After working there for 2 years, one day activists came to my village and they spoke to the parents and convinced them to send their children to Balashram, a rehabilitation center, rather than sending them for work. With the hope of bright future of their children and quite confident about good education of their children, me and my other friends were sent to Balashram, a rehabilitation center. I completed my senior high school in Balasham, and then I got admitted to University of Delhi in BSc Life Sciences course. I recently completed my post-graduation in applied microbiology, and I want to become a researcher in the field of science. While living at Balasham, I got the chance to participate in International Labour Organization's annual conference, where I asked leaders from all over the world that in 10 to 20 years, will we be able to make this world free from child labor, where education is the birthright of every child? They all agreed on it and committed to work with full of compassion to make this world free from child labor. In 2009 Intrust Women Conference in London, I represented millions of unheard voices, and I asked everybody who were present over there to ensure that no child should lose his or her life in mines anymore. What we are going through right now is undoubtedly the worst phase of our lives. As the whole world is dealing with COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected almost every country in this world, nobody will feel the worst of its impact as painfully as the world's most marginalized young people. Children in living hard to reach villages, children living in illegal slum settlements, children are forced to work, children are on move. Most of them will experience both intermediate and longer term suffering if the world does not act now. Hundreds and millions of children who have long been excluded from the reliable access to quality education, sanitation, healthcare, and any kind of social protection and net. If you really want to make a better world for the children, where every child is free to see dream, every child is free and access, they can get the access of free education and quality education, where they can get the nutritious food, then we all need to work together. Then we all need to work together to achieve it. Where each individual need to work as a bridge builders. And we have to fight this battle as we have never fought it before. We all are change makers. We have fire within us. And today, this platform, Mandela Bridge World E-Summit, plays a key role bringing all the youth change makers at one platform. We all youth need to collaborate. We have to work in a collaboration with policymakers, with decision makers, and with local political representatives and government officials to make sure that they listen to our demands and they fulfill it. We also need to put pressure on them so that they can act on our problems and they can fulfill our demands. And from this platform, I appeal all the leaders of the world that make sure that there must be equal participations of the youth while they make any decision or any law, because we youth are the leaders of today, not the leaders of tomorrow. And today, as a youth leader of 100 million, I'm working to build a compassionate world for the children. 100 Millions campaign has started to realize the dream of the children and also to make aware the youth that they have to speak not only for themselves, but also for hundreds of millions of their brothers and sisters who are denied with their right to education, who are denied with their education. Over 100 million children endure difficult conditions. I mean, they are deprived of their right to education. They are deprived of their childhood. They cannot see the dream like me and like you. We all are connected, and because we are here, we all are interlinked with each other. What happens to you impacts me. We cannot say that we are different. We all are together. And it is the time to globalize the compassion. It is the best time that world should understand the compassion. And today I urge all of you to join the Justice for Every Child campaign, which makes a strong call to all the global community to take a strong action and to work for the world's most marginalized children and the families. And I believe that leaders of the world must ensure that $1 trillion must go to protect the world's most vulnerable and most marginalized children and their family. We all need to stand together to demand justice for every child. We all are change makers. We have fire within us. And we have to stand together to make it. So I urge everybody to join this campaign and come together to ensure that every child is free to dream, every child should get education, and every child should get what he wants to do. Thank you very much.
Manam, it's a great moment for us. Have your inspiration, your life story, your hope, and also your challenge to all of us. We will be together in this cause to work for the freedom for every child around the world. Thank you so much. Também nesta sessão de encerramento, uma outra voz jovem de Portugal, com responsabilidade no Alto Comissariado para as Migrações, faz parte do seu Conselho Diretivo, marca presença nesta sessão de encerramento. O Dr. José Reis junta-se a nós. O Alto Comissariado para as Migrações e o Programa Escolhas é um dos parceiros fundamentais do desenvolvimento da Academia de Líderes Ubuntu desde há anos e o apoio e o empenho desta instituição no desenvolvimento deste projeto têm sido essenciais. E por isso é com imenso gosto que nesta sessão de encerramento damos a palavra ao Dr. José Reis, em nome do Alto Comissariado para as Migrações e do Programa Escolhas. Bem-vindo.
Muito boa noite. Antes de mais, agradecer o convite. Para mim é um prazer e uma honra estar aqui neste evento recheado de pessoas por si só altamente inspiradoras, reunidas em torno de alguém que eu considero a definição de alguém inspirador, que é o Nelson Mandela, e que tivemos a sorte de partilhar a sua história de forma próxima. Muitos no futuro hão de falar dele com certeza como alguém que ficará marcadamente na história ao lado de pessoas como o Gandhi ou como o Luther King, naquilo que é a minha opinião. Também foi bom para mim ouvir estas personalidades todas ao longo deste dia. Foi muito rico e que o tempo passou muito rapidamente, porque também foi um momento que deu para eu refletir e consolidar algumas ideias que eu próprio tinha, portanto, que fui construindo ao longo da minha vida, e foi com satisfação que percebo que existem muitos pensamentos similares, parecidos àquilo que eu também, à percepção que eu fui construindo, e isso também dá-me aqui algum aconchego interior. Essas ideias já foram partilhadas aqui, e eu acredito que se, mesmo que alguém viva num ambiente com dificuldades, onde não tem acesso a tudo o que deveria ter, onde pode ser alvo de injustiças, eu acredito que essa pessoa, se for tocada em algum momento por outra pessoa, pode aumentar a sua possibilidade de vir a alcançar algo muito além daquilo que era a sua expectativa inicial. E eu, felizmente, ao longo da minha vida vi isto em vários contextos, e hoje estou em representação do Alto Comissariado para as Migrações, mas ao longo da minha vida estive noutros contextos e curiosamente estive e cruzei-me com o Ubuntu, quer nas escolas, quer na comunidade, quer na reinserção social. Foram contextos onde eu estive e vi estas pessoas e via o Ubuntu a criar pontes, a dar esperança. Por isso, agora estar aqui outra vez, por a ironia da vida, vir parar aqui o Alto Comissariado para as Migrações e cruzar-me aqui com o Ubuntu e saber que o Alto Comissariado para as Migrações e o Ubuntu são parceiros fortes e que fazem um trabalho espetacular, para mim só me deixa muito feliz e espero contribuir enquanto alguém do Conselho Diretivo para que essa relação forte continue no futuro, cada vez melhor. Outra coisa que eu também gostaria de partilhar é que quando nós conseguimos que essas pessoas ou pessoas toquem em alguém, é espetacular, é extraordinário. Mas quando se consegue fazer esta ponte com as instituições, fica ainda mais espetacular. Portanto, se eu consigo fazer algo, se eu consigo tocar e se eu conseguir criar a ponte com as instituições locais, com as autarquias, com os estatais, quer com as empresas, se eu conseguir criar essa rede, a minha intervenção vai ser muito mais forte e vai ser muito mais alargada. E eu vou conseguir resultados muito superiores. Portanto, uma das coisas que eu acho que deve ser feita é devemos dar ferramentas àquelas pessoas que estão no terreno, e eu não utilizei o termo tocar por acaso, porque aquelas pessoas que eu ouvi-os falar, ouvi muita gente falar e percebi que elas sentiam os problemas, que elas viviam os problemas. E nós temos que aproveitar essa característica. E o Estado tem que aproveitar essas características. As empresas têm que capitalizar, têm que financiar estas características. Temos que aproveitar a empatia, o poder de descentração que algumas pessoas têm de perceber, de se colocar no lugar do outro e dar-lhes ferramentas para fazerem o seu trabalho. E o conhecimento, porque quem está no terreno muitas vezes percebe aquilo que quem está a gerir um país ou a gerir outras coisas não consegue sentir. Portanto, eu acho que deve ser potenciada, e o tema sendo as pontes, acho que vem a propósito, deve ser potenciada a ponte entre a pessoa ou as pessoas que necessitam, as pessoas que estão no terreno e que sentem essas necessidades e que decidem fazer algo, sem mais, e as instituições públicas ou privadas, os mecenas, as ONGs, coletividades, que potenciem a ação daqueles que identificaram o problema e que decidiram dar um passo. Eu acho que o Mandela foi alguém que primou pela construção de pontes e nós, e eu pessoalmente, e em representação do Alto Comissariado para as Migrações, aspiro e gostaria muito que essa construção de pontes também fosse consolidada cada vez mais, e quero agradecer imenso o convite, imenso ao trabalho que vocês todos fazem, e até mais. Muito obrigado.
Foi o Dr. José Reis, do Alto Comissariado para as Migrações e do Programa de Escolhas. É para nós um grande orgulho poder contar consigo nesta sessão de encerramento. O seu exemplo e do trabalho que desenvolve, não só agora no Alto Comissariado, mas tudo o que foi o seu caminho, tal como o Mana Mansari, são razões de esperança e de inspiração para todos nós. Nesta sessão de encerramento quisemos dar também a possibilidade de olharmos para outros parceiros e trazer aqui a rede de parceiros da Academia de Líderes Ubuntu, representada pela Fundação Tomilho, que em Espanha, em Madrid, tem sido um parceiro muito importante. Nesta sessão de encerramento, a palavra ao nosso companheiro Ángel Serrano, da Fundação Tomilho, para nos dirigir também, a partir de Espanha, ainda não tínhamos tido a presença de nenhum orador espanhol, nesta nossa sessão, para nos dirigir uma mensagem no Día Internacional Nelson Mandela. Ángel, bienvenido.
Gracias. Hola, amigas y amigos de todo el mundo. Gracias, Rui, por la invitación para participar en la celebración del Día Internacional de Nelson Mandela, con este objetivo de honrar el legado de Mandela y, en particular, de inspirar a las nuevas generaciones para seguir construyendo un mundo mejor. El planeta entero está viviendo una situación complicada, al menos diferente, que nos mantiene encerrados en nuestras casas y que está provocando que el concepto sobre el espacio y el tiempo pierdan su ritmo habitual. Lo que nos era cotidiano ahora se convierte en excepcional y nos hace también que deseemos lo que antes no le dábamos tanta importancia. En la Fundación Tomillo creemos sin duda en el poder de las personas para transformar la sociedad en la que vivimos y así reducir la inequidad, queremos contagiar además esta visión optimista sobre el ser humano. Todos y todas nacemos con un enorme potencial, pero no todos y todas tenemos las mismas oportunidades. Merecemos poder elegir nuestro futuro, pero muchos niños y niñas y jóvenes carecen de la educación y el apoyo que necesitan para alcanzar sus sueños, e incluso muchas veces para tener esos sueños. Los obstáculos que enfrentan, la pobreza, la discriminación, los traumas, las familias desestructuradas, la red social deteriorada o nociva, hacen sus caminos muy difíciles, provocando una perpetuación de la pobreza de generación en generación. En Tomillo estamos convencidos de que la equidad educativa es una de las palancas fundamentales para la reducción de la pobreza y la desigualdad social. Por ello trabajamos con estos niños y niñas y jóvenes en situación de máxima vulnerabilidad, facilitándoles los apoyos adecuados desde su etapa educativa para que puedan desarrollar su máximo potencial, convirtiéndose en esos jóvenes competentes y comprometidos, capaces de elegir su futuro y de inspirar a otros en su entorno. Vivir una pandemia de esta magnitud en el siglo XXI es absolutamente extraño. Nos pilla a todos, ricos y pobres, listos y buenos, solos y acompañados, desacostumbrados. Y a muchos niños y niñas que acompañamos cada día y a sus familias les pilla además fuera de juego, sin internet, sin herramientas necesarias para ponerse en contacto con los demás y a veces también sin ganas. Además, a esta brecha social se han añadido también otras 2 o 3 brechas más, como la digital, que ahora estamos constatando, como la brecha económica, que ya les venía machacando y que ahora sencillamente ha dejado sin ingresos a muchos, y la brecha educativa al quedarse descolgados de los colegios. El aislamiento social obligatorio ha acelerado de manera exponencial los esfuerzos por la digitalización de la inmensa mayoría de los jóvenes, golpeados por circunstancias familiares y económicas adversas. Y cuanto más jóvenes, más dificultades. Y aunque todo esto ya lo sabíamos, lo que nos importa es generar oportunidades para que los menores y los jóvenes tengan la posibilidad y sueñen con un futuro mejor para ellos y su familia. Pero a veces, como a todos, el orden de la prioridad se altera o simplemente la visión se cubre de nubes, de dificultades, de miedos, y nos cuesta ver qué es lo que realmente necesitan de nosotros, qué es lo que realmente puede no solo mejorar o aliviar su situación, sino verdaderamente cambiar la curva de sus vidas. Pero mantenemos la esperanza. Aún en esta situación de confinamiento, empezamos a ver que la niebla va levantando. Estamos a la espera de pasar por esos diferentes estados de desescalada que nos lleven a salir a vernos y a entrar en esa llamada nueva normalidad sin temor y sin miedos, y en la que sigamos creciendo personal y profesionalmente de forma que nos permita valorar y contemplar mejor la belleza en lo próximo y en lo cotidiano. Como expresaba Mandela, es fácil romper y destruir. Los héroes son aquellos que hacen la paz y construyen. Y en este ánimo de construir puentes con otros, estamos dando forma al diseño de un puente muy especial. Un puente de 11.336 kilómetros, que es la distancia que separa a 2 grupos de jóvenes que tienen mucho en común y aún en la lejanía están cercanos, compartiendo sus vidas, sus situaciones difíciles y también sus ganas de trabajar juntos para un mundo mejor, más justo y más solidario. Les une su gusto por la cocina. Son un grupo de menores tutelados y atendidos por la Fundación Tomillo desde programas formativos en hostelería y otros jóvenes como ellos y en situaciones muy parecidas que cursan los mismos programas en el Centro Nehuenche, en San Carlos de Bariloche, en la Patagonia sur de Argentina. En este puente Madrid-Bariloche, nuestros jóvenes se comprometen a compartir todo aquello que les ayude a profundizar en la conciencia de sí mismos, en su personalidad, sus emociones y sus capacidades. En estos días están diseñando un vídeo de presentación de sus gustos y de su barrio y de su ciudad y de sus ilusiones y sus sueños de futuro para enviarlo vía internet a sus compañeros de la otra parte del mundo. Se comprometen a intercambiar experiencias que les ayuden a confiar más en sus habilidades y se conviertan en protagonistas de su propia historia. Intercambiarán recetas de cocina tradicionales de ambos países. Así, juntos serán capaces de afrontar y transformar las dificultades que atraviesan en oportunidades. Las dificultades de conexión son grandes, por lo que tendrán que ingeniárselas para estar en contacto y se comprometen también a diseñar dinámicas que les haga ponerse en el lugar del otro, compartiendo proyectos de aprendizaje-servicio. En cuanto puedan abrir sus cocinas, dedicarán esfuerzos para ayudar a las familias más necesitadas de su entorno. Sin duda, son tiempos para descubrir los verdaderos héroes y heroínas. Ya hoy hemos visto muchos de ellos. Los agentes de cambio que este mundo necesita, estos jóvenes y sus educadores están dispuestos a demostrar que otro mundo y que otra sociedad son posibles. Desgraciadamente, el invierno duro en esta parte de Argentina y el confinamiento en nuestras dos ciudades no ha permitido visibilizar más allá de esta pancarta común el puente que están construyendo, pero prometemos dar imagen en cuanto sea posible. Muchas gracias desde Madrid, España. Buen día de Mandela a todas y todos. Ánimo, cuídense mucho y un fuerte abrazo.
Muchísimas gracias, Ángel. Ha sido una alegría te poder escuchar acá. Fundación Tomillo es uno de los aliados principales de la Academia de Líderes Ubuntu en España. Tus palabras han sido muy buenas para inspirar a todos nosotros. Mil gracias a ti. Têm visto ao longo da sessão, atrás de mim, a ponte 25 de Abril. Foi uma das mais de 60 pontes que mudaram de nome. E nesta sessão de encerramento queremos voltar a recordar esse movimento extraordinário que por todo o mundo permitiu que hoje, 18 de julho, muitas pontes fossem pontes Nelson Mandela. E para simbolizar todo o trabalho feito em tantos países, escolhemos para terminar o exemplo da ponte de Tolima e Huila, com os nossos companheiros Ubuntu, liderados por Pablo Lozano, que também ali, no interior da Colômbia, quiseram celebrar esta ponte Nelson Mandela.
La comunidad y la Academia de Líderes Ubuntu se hunde en este acto simbólico de renombrar el Puente Las Delicias como el Puente Mandela, símbolo de la unión entre dos pueblos que buscan el desarrollo regional, que buscan la superación de la pobreza, que buscan la construcción de puentes para su bienestar. Hoy conmemoramos y exaltamos el natalicio de nuestro gran líder Nelson Mandela. Hoy rompemos barreras geográficas y unimos a dos departamentos hermanos, el Tolima y el Huila. Hoy es un día muy especial. Estamos reunidos como constructores de puentes en honor a Nelson Mandela. Este puente representa la fraternidad cultural, ambiental y de liderazgo, demostrándonos que los límites se rompen con fuertes abrazos. Hoy, 18 de julio, celebramos nuestra lucha diaria e incansable por cambiar el mundo. Yo soy porque tú eres.
Gracias a nuestros amigos de Colômbia, de Huila y Tolima, con el liderazgo de Pablo Lozano, han conectado las dos orillas deste rio. Ha sido muy bonito. E estamos a chegar ao fim desta nossa jornada. E para encerrar, dos co-presidentes, o professor John Volmink. Dear John, we have this very long journey together today around this Mandela Bridges World E-Summit. I'd like to invite you to these closing remarks of this fantastic meeting during the last 6 hours. John, the floor is yours.
And thank you very much, Louis. I'm sure, like me, many of you are tired. We've spent almost 7 hours together but this was an historic moment for me. It's historic for many reasons. But today I've learned so much from people, some of whom have a circle of influence that's much bigger than mine, and others the same as mine, and others smaller than mine. But it really doesn't matter. We all have learned today how we can change the world, and not just change it, but change it for the better. So today is a historic day because it brought together so many people around the world to express their collective belief that it is possible to imagine a world that works as one family, one community. We have expressed that belief by signing the Ubuntu Declaration. We have expressed that belief by building bridges as a symbolic expression of our belief. So what we are talking about is a sense of family, a sense of community. And that is so important in a world that is so divided. And I want to suggest that the Ubuntu narrative is a counter-narrative to the dominant narrative that sees the world as a place where groups of people are different based on their race and origin and language, occupation, gender, religion, and national. Make us believe that those differences are more real and more enduring than our common humanity. And that's the narrative that we have to challenge. I want to say that Ubuntu, if you understand Ubuntu, a world that understands Ubuntu and respects it, is one in which we look for differences, we celebrate differences, because it encourages a global perspective, celebrating what is human in all cultures, and helps us to recognize that this fighting, group rivalries, unhealthy national competition can, in this age, only lead to total destruction. What did I take away today? Basically, two major things. The one is that the world as we knew it before COVID-19 was a world that was in trouble. And the world was and remains a place of uncertainty, a place of complexity, a place of ambiguity, a place of volatility. But we are in trouble not because it's so complex, but we are in trouble because, for the most part, as people occupying this earth, we have been driven by self-interest, and we have been driven by greed. And that makes the dream of living together as a family, that makes it an impossible dream. At the national and global levels, we appear to be preferring to work separately rather than cooperating with each other. That's the other point that came across quite strongly. And that places severe limitation with chronic crises such as climate change, such as epidemics, such as tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS. But now we have to deal with COVID-19. And COVID-19 had brought everything to a standstill. that old world that we all lived in, that's come to a standstill. And that, as Mohammed Yunus has said, that old normal is in disarray. And COVID-19 has not only brought everything to a standstill, but it uncovered, it laid bare the many contradictions in our society and the deep inequalities which prevent people from being participants in the choices that affect their lives. But lastly, it created an opportunity for us, as we heard throughout this conference, to reimagine a world that we can finally live in together as one human family, recognizing our interdependence and our connectedness. And this is what Ubuntu is all about. So I leave here asking myself one question as we draw to a close. And I would like each one of you to ask yourself the same question. What is just the one idea that I can take on board that will inspire me and inspire those around me and help us to rediscover our belief that it is possible to build a new world, a better world, where we live together in peace as one human family. All the very best, and thank you very much. Rui, thank you very much for your leadership. Very much appreciated. Good night.
Thank you, John. As you know, you are really our main inspiration in this journey around the Ubuntu Leaders Academy. Your example, your life is an inspiration for all of us. Thank you to be this co-chair of this event with José Ramos Horta. It was a great job done by you and José Ramos Horta. E para chegar ao fim desta nossa jornada, depois de uma longa caminhada, inspirando-nos em Nelson Mandela, sabemos que depois de uma longa caminhada, sentar-nos um pouco a descansar para recomeçar de novo. Quero, neste encerramento, agradecer. A gratidão é talvez a qualidade do Ubuntu, a par da coragem, mais importante. Esta iniciativa foi desenvolvida pela equipa do Instituto Padre António Vieira, e em particular da Academia Ubuntu e de toda a rede Ubuntu Global. Quero aqui particularmente enviar um abraço muito grande para o presidente da Associação Academia de Líderes Ubuntu Latam, Eduardo Sedental, que a partir do Brasil nos tem acompanhado. Toda a equipa da Ubuntu Global Network tornou possível a ação das mais de 60 pontos. Quero agradecer àqueles que tornam possível o trabalho da Academia de Líderes Ubuntu, a Fundação Carlos Gulbenkian, a Caixa Geral de Depósitos, o Programa Escolhas e o Alto Comissariado para as Migrações e a Organização de Estados Ibero-Americanos. Em particular, para este evento, tivemos parcerias muito importantes. As Infraestruturas de Portugal, que nos apoiaram de uma forma muito generosa, escolhendo estas 5 pontes principais que aqui nos uniram, mas também Robert Kennedy Human Rights Center, com a Kerry Kennedy, que foi muito importante em toda a estruturação deste programa, a World Leadership Alliance, Clube de Madrid, Nizami Ganjava International Center em Baku, também essencial da estruturação de todo este programa. A todos estes parceiros, o nosso muito obrigado. Mas esta sessão longa, de 7 horas, só foi possível graças ao empenho de uma equipa vasta, de uma equipa que eu aqui quero destacar pessoa a pessoa. E quero começar pela pessoa que foi responsável por toda esta operação, pela coordenação geral, Rui Nunes da Silva. Um grande aplauso para o Rui Nunes da Silva e toda a nossa equipa, a capacidade que teve de liderar todo este processo na Regi. Ao seu lado, Samuel Rodrigues, Samuel Rodrigues é um Ubuntu 100%, é alguém extraordinário que esteve na realização de toda esta sessão. Foi aqui, nesta casa que é a sua, que nos acolheu. Também para ele, um aplauso muito grande para o nosso Samuel Rodrigues, por tudo o que aqui nos foi possibilitando. No apoio executivo a esta coordenação geral esteve a Francisca Assis Teixeira e a Tânia Neves. Muito obrigado pelo vosso trabalho, pela capacidade também de montarem tudo isto. Na coordenação dos contactos internacionais, a Mónica Rocha e Mel, que também coordenou todo o trabalho de coordenação e de interpretação, também o nosso agradecimento. No apoio técnico, o Afonso Nogueira, o Daniel Rodrigues, o Marino Gaspar. Na coordenação da imagem e comunicação, a Luísa Vidal e o Pedro Santos. No apoio e secretariado-geral, a Carmo Pupo, o Igor Alves, a Isabel Sérgio e o Mariano Sacoto. No apoio para a mobilização de Pontos Ubuntu, a Carla Martinho, a Sara Martins, a Carmen Carvalho, a Sara Dias, o Tcherno Baldé, o Josimar Afonso. No Helpdesk, para ajudar a quem foi ter necessidade de apoio para entrar nesta sessão, a Carla Martinho e a Carmen Carvalho. Quero deixar uma palavra de enorme gratidão a toda a equipa do Samuel Rodrigues, na regi, o Nuno Benavente e o Ricardo Costa, assistente aqui no platô, ajudando-me a orientar toda a ação, o Jason Heyman, a edição, o Flávio Elias, no apoio técnico, o Rafael Vaz. E a toda a fantástica equipa de tradução e interpretação, a Mónica, a Joana Mota, a Marta Bastos, a Sofia Leitão, a Joana Gonçalves, a Andréia Esteves, a Cátia Hernandes, a Maria Jiménez, a Julieta da Costa, a Sílvia Jaime, a Diana Pelais, a Sofia Norton, a Sílvia Pilici, a Cecília Maia, o Tcherno Baldé, a Marta Rodrigues e a Maria Miguel. Foi esta grande equipa que tornou possível concretizar este momento único na nossa história da Academia de Líderes Ubuntu, este momento extraordinário em que celebramos o legado de Mandela, mas mais do que isso, nos comprometemos para o futuro. E o último desafio que vos quero deixar é que aqueles que não têm a sua câmara ligada, que liguem a sua câmara. E que, como a Tandy Shine nos desafiava, que à escala global, os que ainda resistimos nesta maratona, possamos dançar o Asi Bonanga, de Johnny Clegg, com Mandela. É assim que nos despedimos de todos. Um abraço, dancemos juntos este legado de Mandela, porque também a dançar nos ligamos e nos comprometemos com o futuro. Um abraço a cada um e a cada uma de vós.
13 years ago, in 1986, South Africa was in a state of emergency, and it was a very intense cultural struggle that was being waged. And we were part of that, and this is a song that we wrote for truly one of the greatest South Africans in history, Nelson Mandela, and we'd like to open the show tonight with a tribute to him.
Asimbonanga Mandela thina laphe khona laphe hleli khona Asimbonanga Mandela thina laphe khona laphe hleli khona